All right, good evening, welcome. This is the July 18th, 2024 meeting of the Bow Planning Board. I'm Sandy Crystal, acting chair this evening, One Shoreview Drive.
Elena Colby, select board rep.
Carrie Mackinnon, Community Development Director.
Adam Sandall, 9 Edgewood Drive.
Jess Duke, 50 Brown Hill Road.
Jonathan Petrangelo, 5 Whittier Drive.
Oh, just in time.
Oh.
And introduce you.
Oh, Michael Lawton, 3 Asa Drive.
Great.
So there's, wait, hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members here tonight. One is an alternate. Do you want everyone to vote or do you want to keep it anonymous?
I think we can have everybody vote. Okay, and we start with old business. Bob Pike, Westover subdivision, open space ownership.
So I can give it, so there's been some discussion back and forth. The Westover subdivision was conditionally approved by the planning board a couple of months ago now. And there's been some discussion back and forth about the ownership structure of the open space land. And so the applicant has asked to come this evening to discuss those options with the board.
I'm Maria Dolder. I'm the attorney on the project. And so as Carrie said, so we started kind of walking down the path of what we were doing with the open space. And when I was talking to Carrie, it looks like most of the new subdivisions in town actually deeded their open space to the town as opposed to having it under an HOA. And I don't think we really discussed that much at the planning board hearings when we were here for the approvals. So after talking to Carrie, Bob Pike did go before the select board and just sort of informally asked their opinion on that. He got positive feedback from that board on the town taking over that property. And then Carrie indicated that she had just informally mentioned it to this board as well. And she also got positive feedback from this board. So at this point in time, we would like to deed the open space to the town. And so if that is something the board's amenable to, we just ask that you waive under your subdivision regulations, the HOA is mandatory. So we just ask that that be waived and we would be very happy to deed the open space to the town and we'll just go through the rest of the process with the selectmen.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
I don't know what I'm allowed to bring up, but the select board during that meeting did have concerns regarding who was going to do surveying boundaries and who was going to be doing the stewardship of the property because it does come with a lot of restrictions with fish and game and trail systems and wetlands and DES permitting. And as I recall, that was part of a conversation that was had. So the select board's thoughts were that it was tentative. There was concerns that it was very similar and prohibitive open space as Sawmill Loop, which wasn't also a very interesting situation. So
When you said prohibitive, do you mean like the restrictions that
the restrictions on the property, as well as what is it going to cost to keep up with the property and protect the property?
So is that just like preparing like recording it and putting all that information into like a recorded deed?
Well,
What the restrictions
in
are?
terms of restrictions on, well, the thing that people sort of, I think, get a little confused about is there's this one piece of open space that has a lot of restrictions. It's part of the mitigation of the coastal forest products. And that's kind of an off limits, no new trails. Then there's the open space that's, related to the cluster development. And there are some restrictions in our rules, but I don't believe that, I'm not sure, I don't recall any DES restrictions related to the wetlands permit for the subdivision. So, well, I guess.
I was gonna say, and to Sandy's point, so the only open space that we are actually talking about tonight is the open space that is part of the subdivision, because the 40 acres, that was the mitigation land, is already dealt with. That's off the table. That we are required to deed to the town. We already have the easement in place, but when this subdivision is final, so to speak, we're required to deed that. So that portion is not really on the table. That's not what we're discussing tonight. The only part that we're discussing is just the open space, like Sandy indicated, that's with this subdivision. And I am not handling the state permits. We have another attorney that's doing that, but it is my understanding that they would prefer that the town hold it. That is their preference. They prefer a fishing game. They prefer that we deed it to the town. And then we would do a deed that has any restrictions, obviously. And we could obviously work with the town on who surveys that and gets that taken care of.
So regardless of who holds the land, if there's easements or anything, any of those legal documents have to be reviewed by the town's attorney and then recorded by the applicant, regardless of what the structure is.
Do you have any other questions for me?
Do you know what the status of the state permit is?
So I know that they're making progress, but once again, we have another attorney working on it, so I'm not quite sure where they are I just get status updates of we're moving along and they're waiting to find out.
I know, there had been a request for more information, the information had been submitted, and we typically, unfortunately, don't get copied on the stuff that gets sent to the state, which we really should. It's not in the rules, but we don't get copied on the response. So, we don't.
Yeah, the feedback that I got is it is moving along on the normal course as to what you would expect it to move along in. But one of the questions was what was going to be the ownership of open space. So that's why we figured we might as well get on top of that now.
So I guess procedurally, I think tonight they're looking for a recommendation from the planning board to bring to the selectmen, who would then go through their procedure to actually accept the land when it's time. I do think that in the future, when this is all wrapped up, we do need to have a public hearing. This wasn't advertised as a public hearing tonight, so we do need to have a public hearing because it is a change to the plans that were conditionally approved previously. But
Do we have a plan that, I just can't remember. I know that the lot on the back was the coastal thing, but I just don't remember what the open space.
Yeah, it's kind of sort of
Is it
like that.
connected to any other town land?
Well, it's connected to the back piece, obviously.
Right.
It is connected,
There's a trail system that was at the front of it. Like on the,
see, we need a map of
I know.
open space that's hanging up, that's large.
And that's one of the concerns that was also brought up during the select board meeting, I think,
Okay.
was that
it's in there.
if there's trails on the property currently, again, the cost to
Contain them.
maintain them and make sure that they are included in, if possible.
but that would be no different than a current open space that has trails on it.
Right.
Yeah, and
That would be part of the HOA. I'm only speaking on experience.
Yeah, no,
We're in our current situation, there's a HOA that owns the open space and there's right of ways for the power lines that go on it. And there's also the access for the Bow snowmobile trail and then the hiking trail. So like all of that is still the responsibility of those organizations that have the rights over it.
Yep.
So I think to Carrie's point, it would have to be included in whatever is worked up and reviewed by the attorney as far as what's in the deed.
Yeah, so I think there's pros and cons to both approaches. If there's a homeowners association, the responsibility and burden of taking care of the land falls to them. The downside is that it's hard to make sure they're actually gonna do that and to protect the land appropriately. The town owns it. The town has lots of control, can make sure it's protected. Downside is you're responsible for taking care of it. So that goes both ways.
Do we want a motion to make on a recommendation?
Well, oh, Elena, does the town want it?
It's a very premature question, like, and the mechanism that, and broader discussion, not gonna waste a lot of time on it, but the mechanism that beholds a town as a select board to accept property that's already been told you have, like, what the planning board kind of ties the hands of the select board. So, because the select board, unless the rep says something or brings it back to the select board for discussion is.
And that was why
So
we
it-
recommended the applicant went to the.
Right.
The Board of Selectmen first, just to get that initial feedback.
Yeah.
To try to get some, unless, in case there was a major concern, just to find out.
Yeah.
Upfront.
It's just difficult, right? Because if you guys, as a planning board, when the planning board says this is a condition of your approval, and then what if the select board said no? What happens? Just odd.
I think the timing would be difficult depending on when that happened, but I think the result would be they'd come back to the planning board, they'd do an amendment and have to form an HOA
Yeah.
instead and just change the plan.
Still want to make a
I'll make a motion. So the motion is gonna be to
recommend.
recommend that it be put into town property, but I guess we want to have that part of the next planning board meeting to have a open hearing.
So yeah, I don't know how you want to do the timing of this.
So I mean, obviously, we don't want it to hold up the approval, so this kind of came up after the fact. I think it's hopeful that if we have to do this in a public hearing, that we can schedule that public hearing and the select board meeting in the same timeframe. So I'm not sure when the next two meetings are, but I think you would like to sort of have us do both of them in that same timeframe.
And one important thing to know is that the Board of Selectmen process is extended.
3 meetings long,
Right?
And
right? We have to have
yeah,
3
you have to
public
have
hearings.
2 public
public
hearings
hearings
and
and a
a
meeting.
vote afterwards. Which requires scheduling special Board of Selectmen meetings because they have to be within like 2 weeks of each other. It's not.
Yeah, okay. And we can talk about the timing of that, just so we can figure out what that looks like for us. So I don't know if this board is willing to at least just give a recommendation and then we'll go through the next stage. And then obviously we'd have a formal decision, and at that board meeting, you could determine if you're gonna waive the HOA for us or if you still want an HOA.
Yeah, I was
Would you still want to do a public hearing for the next planning board meeting, which is on August 15th then?
Yes.
Okay.
so
I mean, unless we got, I think the bottom line was, unless Bob got negative feedback, I mean, obviously, if he gets negative feedback, he just wants us to move along, we'll just do the HOA. And at that point in time, what would need to happen is the HOA would own the open space, but we'd need the town to take easement rights to it in order to have a third party. Fishing Game requires a third party to have some easement rights to, restrict, to go in and do the restrictions in case the HOA doesn't. So it would go that path instead. But I think right now he would like to explore this. He thinks it's a good idea. And like I said, it just looked like that was what the other subdivisions were doing in the past. So we figured we would offer it if the town's interested.
So I don't think that the Board of Selectmen necessarily has to go through that entire acceptance process before your final approval. That's happened afterwards for other
Okay.
projects. But you would need to modify, but then we get into the position, it's a chicken or an egg situation.
Yeah, it's weird.
It
Well,
really
it's
should happen
very strange.
together, but
I guess the way that I look at it, and, you know, it's the planning board's gonna, let's just say you favor this. So the planning board would be recommending it. If for some reason the selectmen say no, then if we haven't really technically changed our approvals unless you waive the HOA, and then we just have to come in and tell you that we're doing the HOA, right? So I mean,
so I think we could do a public hearing next month and to make the modification to the plan, because the plan that was conditionally approved said open space will be held by a homeowners association.
correct.
So if you're changing that, we need to come back, have a public hearing, let the abutters know that that's changing. I think assuming that is conditionally approved, then you can go to the selectmen, however that plays out.
Yeah.
If for some reason the selectmen say no, then you're just coming back to the planning board and changing it again.
Exactly, just to
Yeah,
explain.
even if final approval's already happened at that point. So I think that's okay.
And do you have a timing on the select board meeting?
We would have to schedule special meetings for that
Okay.
because they're
Yeah.
only meeting once a month right now, right?
Right, so the next meeting, I think, is the 18th of August. 13th?
13.
13. That's what I meant.
So would it be possible for us to do the meeting on the 13th, or is that because we won't get anything from the planning board on the 15th?
I was thinking about that.
I don't think you have to wait. Because, so the Board of Selectmen works, so you have two public hearings, 2 weeks apart, so they're not gonna be making any decisions, right, at the first. two
Right.
Right,
meetings.
so we
So you
have
could-
this in between, right? So we could maybe go for that first public hearing on 13th, come here on the 15th. And then 2 weeks later.
So
Okay,
we'll talk to the town manager's office.
yeah, if you could just,
Scheduling those
yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
that extra public hearing in the middle and see
That
how it
would
works.
be great.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to make the recommendation to the planning board for the Westover subdivision open space. I'm sorry, select board, select board for the Westover subdivision open space ownership to be turned over to the town versus the HOA for the open space. With the intent of having the planning board meeting on August 15th for the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, good.
Just for conversation's sake while we're here. So there's one scenario where there's no homeowners association at all. The town holds the open space. There's another scenario where the town owns the open space. Is there still a role for a homeowners association in that situation?
I think for open discussion, it's dependent on how the subdivision's built. Like as an example, if you've got islands within a subdivision and you've got to maintain those, or you've got end caps that are facing a roadway that you've got to maintain, I could see there being a need to determine who's gonna take responsibility of
Like those common areas. So I think
maintaining
that's
those
something
common
to think about.
areas. Is my only input there. Cause I just know that a lot of the subdivisions that we have throughout the town have that. Where you've got the one ingress, one egress, right? So you have to have that, and so you've got islands that are in the center there.
I don't think that's proposed here, but
Yeah, I'm just saying in those
They're
cases,
kind of
or if you've got end caps where you've got common area that's. That would be my only. Question to that.
no decisions there. I just kind of wanted to see if anyone had any thoughts.
Okay, great. All right, next, public
Thanks a lot.
Public hearing is application number 406-24. David J. LaFlame and Kelly A. LaFlame Family Trust, wetland protection conditions permit for 522 square feet of wetland buffer impact and 364 feet of wetland impact to construct ground mounted solar electric system for residential use within 105 feet of the Turry Pond Prime Wetland buffer. And this is also it's an after the fact approval for the existing solar array.
Thank you. Hey, Carrie. Hi, Ginger. They were super helpful. I'm Heather Iworski. I'm with Revision Energy.
I am Robbie Cummings. I'm the operation manager for Revision Energy.
And we have the homeowner, Saban LaFamme, back here. So if there's any questions relating to him, you can totally answer them. So in a nutshell, Mr. LaFlamme had a ground mounted solar electric system permitted by the town and installed in his backyard a few years ago. It wasn't enough solar power, wasn't enough electricity to offset his goals. So he wants to offset all of his electric needs. So he called us because that company is no longer in business. We went out, we assessed, we designed a system, applied for a permit and realized, oh, it's in the wetland buffer. And that's when we found out, oh, the original system's in a wetland buffer. So we did a redesign and we've moved our system outside of the wetland, but it's still within that prime wetland buffer. So we can get into that. The existing system, it does not make sense to decommission, take it down and rebuild. It's just going to cause more havoc to the land. It's also technically was approved by the town, but it's relevant to this case. We want it to be approved, obviously, so he can get a second array put up. So I'm hoping that we can get approvals for both today. So we're looking to install a 9.6 kilowatt DC grid tied solar electric system. We also have contracted with Mark West, a wetland scientist, and we got all the DES wetlands permits. So the original system is approved for the wetlands. So that's all set. We didn't have to do that for the new array because we moved it outside of the wetland buffer. So there is no DES permitting. That's why we're here today for that wetland kind of conditional use permit. So the solar array is built on, we install ground screw piles, like ground screws into the ground. So there's no concrete, there's no toxic material, no contamination. They're like 3.5 inch piles, and there's going to be about maybe 10 of them or so. And they're just installed to hold up the array. Besides that, there's a temporary trench going from the array to the house where the meter is located to run the power so that connects to the house so he can use the solar. So what we're talking about is the array, the whole thing with the wetland. It's a wet meadow, which is meant to basically the function for the wet meadow is to collect runoff during periods of high rainwater. So what it does is just reduce the likelihood of flooding downstream. The thing about where the solar is located is it's on a hill, so it's on a slope. So no matter what, it doesn't, like Mark even went out there, the scientist, there really isn't any impact to the functions of the wetland or that purpose. The pond is behind, so there's no rainwater that's going to come off the panels and wash into the pond. It's just going to go right back into the earth. The earth is going to, the grass will still grow, the meadow will still be a meadow. The only difference is there'll be, a few screws, but they're in the soil, they're steel. Like I said, they're non-toxic and they're not, if they need to be uninstalled and decommissioned, they can totally get taken out. They're not permanent. So we're hoping we can get approval to do this work. And due to the fact that we did push it out as much as we could from that wetland, I know it's a little hard to see in the site plan, so I try to retrace the line. But it is outside, like the plan set says, how many inches it is outside of that wetland. We can't put it here. We've exhausted this option. There's a septic system, there's trees. There's just no room in the front. And you don't want the solar in the front yard anyway.
We can't put it on the roof. The roof isn't big enough and it's not structurally sound to even hold the solar. Can't put it over here because like I said, there's a septic. You can't really, like this really is the only area. We wanted to put it over here, but that's obviously not gonna work. So we did our best, we shifted it, and the trench is even gonna be outside of the wetland going to the house. The good news is that this system that's already built was approved by the DES, so that trenching for that trench and dredge permit, so they did allow it. As long as, you know, the land goes back to the natural kind of conditions. And that's what we plan to do, and that's what the homeowner, you know, plans to do. You mow it every so often to
Once a year.
once a year, yeah.
A year.
So I mean, it stays natural. It's a natural habitat. So I don't foresee any issues. I think not only is it gonna benefit the environment, obviously, it's not gonna impact that wetland, the lakes back here, well, the pond, Turry Pond. And down here, downhill, it's just gonna absorb into the meadow. That's what it's meant for. That's what the soil's for. Nothing's really gonna change. We're not talking about building a huge structure. It's not that big, you know. And can't really see it from the neighbors. You can't see it from the road, so we're hoping, you know, we can answer all your questions that, you know, we can make this happen, so we can continue and offset his electric bills. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know one of the things that was missing was that function of the wetland. I did provide the wetland application and the wetland permit from the DES, but the function is the wet meadow. So it's retain that excess rainwater. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer. I can tell you the array is not oversized, so we're not selling power. It's for that home specifically. We're not talking about a solar field or shares or anything like that, or, you know, virtual net metering. It's strictly for that property and that home.
I think I'm just a little confused about some of the words that you use, but I think I understand what's going on. So the panels that are there right now were installed in wetlands, in actual wetlands. And the applicant has gone and got like an after the fact permit for that, and that's all taken care of and done. So when you said that it was approved by the town, does that mean that you got like a building permit?
Yes.
Yes.
Didn't come here, that just means that you just got a building permit.
Yeah, there is a building permit on file for it, so the installer at the time did go through the proper things, it just nobody caught
They
that it was.
identified that it was a wetland. buffer.
And
Okay.
the building inspector, when I put through this application for the new one, William caught it. Was it William? No, that's a different town.
I don't
Sorry,
think
it's
that we
not
signed
William.
a few, but was it Mike?
Too many towns.
I think it might have
Michael,
been Mike. I think Mike.
he's the one that was like, hey, I have to deny this, and that's why.
Yeah, and as you explained, it's a wet meadow and on a slope, so you can kind of see how, even though the inspector went out there, he obviously is not a
Right,
wetland
yeah.
scientist, he's a building
Wetland,
inspector.
it's
So you wouldn't
wetland,
expect
so
it to be a wetland on a slope usually.
not a, you know, people expect it to be like a bowl and that's the wetland and.
So is this application also to approve kind of after the fact, those disturbances
Yes.
plus, okay, I
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, it's both combined.
Okay.
So yeah,
I'm
the-
on the same page.
Yeah, the original, after the fact for the wetland impacts and then the proposed wetland buffer impacts.
Okay, and this is a prime wetland?
Okay, there's both a prime wetland and a regular and a non-prime wetland. So I understand that they're 105 feet from the prime, but in some places they're only 4 feet from the wetland. And, you know, we have a, 50-foot wetland boundary.
Can I see the color one?
Yeah, I was trying to.
Yeah, I know, because the plan is very hard to read.
Oh.
Even the color one is extremely hard to read.
We did our best and it was still very, very challenging.
It's, yeah, it I mean, if you were trying to enforce, make sure that what was built looked like the plan, I don't think that anybody could do it unless you were someone was so egregious in where they put it. It's both the size of it and the distances. There's no scale on it. Well, also, if you have, 4 feet from the wetland boundary, there are a lot of questions about how the installation is going to occur to not be any closer for any temporary impacts. So I don't know.
Sandy, can I interrupt just for a second?
Sure.
So as a part of the after the fact permit with DES, we were required to spend about $3,000 for the wetland scientists as well as surveyors to come out and have GPS coordinates for the wetland boundary. So in terms of knowing exactly where this is, there's a way to do it now, because we went through that whole process and that those GPS points exist. So whether or not the town has the capacity to do that, I don't know, but
Right, but we
We've
need
done
a
everything we can
plan,
ourselves.
right, but we need a plan that not only shows the wetland boundary clearly, both the non-prime boundary as well as the prime boundary. But also, I think like temporary impacts for the new stuff. I mean, clearly the old stuff is starting to restore itself. It's extremely difficult to really see what's going on these plans.
It is really close to that wetland boundary. on
I mean,
the plan.
4 feet, we have a 50-foot buffer, so on regular wetlands.
Is there can you explain again why it can't be someplace else?
There really isn't another place.
It could go, I mean, I don't know, is it topography or what, like, why couldn't it go like over here?
Just, farther, let's see.
Farther away and aesthetically wouldn't be great because we already had to move it aesthetically. So we've already messed with the aesthetics and on the trees.
You can't cut trees on neighbors'
Yeah.
property to get shade for her.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah.
Got it.
So we've done a solar axis where we go out there with the sun eye and it tells us how much sun we're gonna have in that location throughout, every month of the year and.
And I'll point out that the wetland scientists did say that there wasn't really any significant impact. So close or not in the buffer or not, he's made that assessment. And the reason we're trying to add capacity is that we added heat pumps and an electric vehicle. So if you really think about sort of net, we're coming out ahead here,
Sandy, do you want to share the Conservation Commission's role in this? Because you reviewed the wetlands permit, right?
We did review the wetlands permit. I don't have the comments. I know that, we reviewed the wetlands permit for the existing array. I think we also saw,
Did you do a site walk for that?
did a site walk. There's the mowing that was done caused a lot of ruts, and we discussed that with Dave about just making sure that it's only mowed when it's dry enough to mow. During a dry part of the year, and I know some years October may not be the dry the dry time. I know last year was very wet, but so maybe not mowing it. And I think there was some language about just trying to restore the ruts to like even things out so the water doesn't
Plantings that are late,
puddle.
are coming. So all kinds of things.
And stuff. I don't, I think they provided the wetland permit, which I think may have incorporated some of the comments of the conservation.
And then the Conservation Commission meeting is actually after this one, but Sandy had sent
Yeah.
it to everyone and I didn't receive
We
it.
didn't receive
So
anything
the
back.
Conservation Commission members had an opportunity to review it individually, although they didn't meet to. review.
Yeah,
They
there,
reviewed the
someone's
initial.
not in the country right now. And kind of low on people at the moment. Most of the people moving out of town. so.
Ah, or, that's a bummer.
Any other comments or thoughts or?
So when you install this panel, I mean, I guess I'm a little concerned about the space around between the panels and the wetland buffer and the installation temporary impacts. Like people staying out of the wetlands while they're building it, because it's, 5 feet. I think it's 5 feet. Are the wetlands,
Yeah.
are the wetlands flagged out there? Like, will your guys know where the wetlands are when
Right now,
they're flagged?
They should be still flagged. And also, so this is staked out where the solar is gonna be. So that's staked out outside of the wetlands. And then their equipment route is not through wetlands.
Okay, so
Found it.
is that the parallels
Red.
lines are the route?
Yeah,
So, okay,
for, it's a 2-day install usually. So to get the screws in, it's usually like a small skid steer. That should only take a couple hours. And as long as the ground's not too wet or whatever, it won't rut it up too bad. We also have mats we can use, put down ground protection mats. For the other things, there's not really much equipment, but a bunch of installers and electricians
And-
hauling panels over and
We would be happy to keep that cordoned off to ensure we don't access it.
yeah.
When we appreciate the environment, like all of these rules are here for a purpose. We appreciate that. We value that. So whatever we can do to build this project and uphold the ideals of the environment and the board, we are all game for.
And I was just gonna say, there's an excavator as well. That would take a couple hours to do that trench. I don't see it taking too long because it is a wet area. I don't foresee it being super rocky or ledgy. But yeah, we're totally happy to rope it off or install, temporary fencing, mesh fencing or whatever that needs. That's why we thought there would be a conditional approval,
Just something so that people
Mhm.
know where it is.
Absolutely.
Correct.
I guess I'm still not, it's not really clear where the wetland line is on the map. Is when you compare, and I know that the GIS boundaries are not accurate.
Good old Mark doesn't use the latest and greatest. He's a one-man show, but he is a scientist and he is certified. So I mean, we're trying to overlay his maps
Right.
with the GIS maps, with our maps for a site plan to build a project for construction and not, we're talking about a small residential system, so the amount of overhead that goes into preparing separate plans, like we're not hiring professional survey engineers for this, like we would for a, say, 1 to 5 megawatt project. So kind of did the best we can with the tools we have for this.
Do you ever use Granite View?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Because I was wondering for the imagery or whatever, sometimes there's better imagery and it's more current.
Yes, Granite View and then New Hampshire DES. But we hired Mark, so we wanted to overlay his actual wetland delineation because those are not always accurate. So he mapped out in his photos and his report what he determined was the real line.
It's funny, though, it's interesting because the first line that's on the one map doesn't look like the line that's on this map. I'm just saying it's not the same shape.
I have this,
So this one is definitely not the same shape as this.
that's this one, right? It should be.
Yes, but if you look at the shape,
Okay.
it's not the same shape. And that's why on this map, it looks like the new array would be in a wetland. And on this one, the wetland seems to scoot around. So
Hmm.
you know,
I mean, I think that the important thing is that the actual wetland in the field is flagged and that we're standing out of it.
So, just to be clear, so this array, where it was here, is gonna go over here, right? So what they're saying, even if it was this. This is the new proposed area.
no,
This is-
this is the square footage. That's just a label for the
So
square
this
footage.
is where it's going to go?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah, the wetland
Oh.
boundaries aren't the same in both maps.
okay. So I'd agree then. It looks like there's.
You guys don't have the colored copies.
You know, and I was hoping to pull it up on the screen, but every once in a while the computer does this thing where if I plug in my flash drive, the mouse doesn't work. So I can't, you can only have one or the other. It's really fun when that happens.
We put the
I
files.
can't see where it is on this one.
Flash right now.
But I can't get them off without
Oh,
mouse. Unless someone's really good with keyboard shortcuts, but.
Not that good.
I see what you're saying. If this was plotted into here, it'd be in the
Yes.
wetland.
It looks like it. visually.
Yes.
I see what you're saying. Can I see the color one too?
Yeah.
I think it'd be easier.
I can tell you that, I don't know what the cause of the discrepancy is, but I can tell you that Mark came out twice. He did it once, and BES said, hey, where are your GPS coordinates? So then he came back, took core samples again, but this time we hired a surveyor, professional survey company to come and do those GPS coordinates too. And both times it had that bump out in the wetland for the array. So I can't explain what you're seeing. I'm not even sure what you're seeing, but I can tell you physically, both times there was that bump out where we we're like, oh, wow, look at that. Isn't that convenient that there's a bump out there and the wetland kind of goes in a little bit. So there's room for the array. Comes the last space on the property to do that.
Maybe.
Well, maybe not.
It's just this looks. Yeah,
It does look different.
it does look different. It's not the same line.
So on the revision energy. So we're all on the same page. On this plan, are those lines based on the GPS coordinates?
It should be based on overlay off this
Versus-
map.
This, okay.
It should be. That's what it's supposed to be.
Did you see what we're talking about?
Yeah, sure.
No, I have to look at it.
Yeah.
See, it looks like a
So
totally.
if you look at this. You look at this, so this is the array, right?
Mhm.
Right here. So this wetland line kind of comes out here, so the array appears to be like right here. If this is the line, and on this one here, it comes back in, you got that little bump out and then it comes out.
That one's a straight.
So like on this, I guess maybe do it the other way. On this figure, where is the new array?
It should be outside. Should be.
The thing is this,
I don't know where this line comes from, but this doesn't look like what's staked out for the wetland. This does. This bump out is the one I was just talking about, and that's where
Yeah.
the array is. So the array here, it's basically from this back corner to this tree, it's right in there. But this bump out is too far here towards the tree. I'm not sure why that's there, but
Do you think this was pre-GPS?
I don't know.
That might have been
Surveyor.
survey. I bet
Yeah,
you.
oh, it
But
definitely,
I'm wondering.
twenty-three,
This
definitely
is
is.
pre-survey and I bet you we had a new one.
Yeah.
This has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, but he did it this
So
spring.
this-
It had to be.
Spring is when he came out again and did the core samples
Yes.
again.
That makes sense.
This should be
Thank you.
the correct.
Yes. This is not.
Yeah, and we can, and they are flagged and no one's tampered with the flag.
This is probably what marked GPS, but the surveyor came out with different equipment
Yeah, this is, I think, Mark,
and.
paint. And
Well, I know,
then he hired a surveyor to actually pinpoint, and what happened was, Because this is from the application he submitted to the DES and the DES kicked it back and said, I need these things. But that stuff didn't make it. I don't have the new attachments because his old array, like his existing array, wasn't in our scope of work. So that happened just between the homeowner and Mark and the surveyor. We were not involved.
Sorry for that confusion,
Sorry, but yeah,
but thank you for catching that.
but yeah.
Now it makes sense as to
Yeah.
why
It
they might
does
look
make
different.
sense. That has to be it. Has to be it.
Thank you for catching that.
So the prime wetland lot is a different line,
Yeah.
not to add more.
Sure. Well, there's the prime wetland is a very poorly drained soil. That's really the way, I mean, obviously it's like Turi Pond.
Yeah.
And the wetlands, but it's really the wetlands as far as where things are very poorly drained.
So where's that line?
That's back here, back off the property.
Okay. And then where's the offset for that?
Yeah, I think the buffers are also, it's not really clear where the buffers are. You know, to say where the buffer is and where you're working within the buffer.
This line here representative of the prime wetland, is that what that is?
Saw so many of these. I don't know which.
But no.
No, the prime
It's 100 and
Side of the
that
property.
line is
The prime wetland is outside of the property.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know that it's even on here.
Right, but
Because
there's,
line.
but I can't see where the,
Okay.
But this says
Says,
it's 100
you
and
know,
five.
105 feet from the prime wetland.
Right, so that's
Oh.
this line here going back.
Where's mine? I didn't get.
Well, yeah, but I don't-
Plans and then I see like. where am I
Right,
putting it?
but it should be,
Oh, this is you.
it should
Right?
be.
No, I think this is.
Oh. I was trying to get my over there.
Okay, I see it right here. It's
Yeah.
105, it's 105 feet.
Yeah, this one says 152, but wait, where? And this one says 105. It says a 105 from boundary of Turi prime wetland, not shown, and this is 152. But if we're
Oh, that's
saying
the
this is
old
the
one.
old plan
That's the old-
anyways.
It's to the old array. That's the old array.
Oh, gotcha. This is from the new array.
So the wetlands permit with the DES was only for the existing array, because that is in a wetland. Yeah, we did not need to apply for a DES permit because we're not building, we don't want to build the new one, a wetland. Whole point, yeah, is to move it and keep it out. And unfortunately, we can only keep it out so far. The longer you put solar away from the point of interconnection as well, the more electricity loss you're gonna see, the bigger wires you need, trenching. The trench path would change, and again, the terrain, you can't see it from here. You know, if this was like a large commercial project, we would have a topo map and you would see the terrain, but that would make this even more busier and confusing than it already is. So it's,
Oh, where's, could I see again the one that has the more specific wetland on it?
That, the color.
Because I'm going, oh, wait, oh, no.
Yeah, it's really,
I traced that one so you can see it better. It's so hard to see. So hard to see.
So the trench is only, it like goes back to the other one?
The trench goes to the house, so technically they should be interconnected.
Plans to the other array,
Mhm.
that's why there's just a small section of wetland.
So the other one.
So there's an existing trench that goes from the house all the way to the initial array. And I believe the plan is to come avoiding as much wetlands as possible, but to connect to that existing trench. Otherwise, it's.
So are there wetland impacts to tie into the new one?
The trench is temporary because it's gonna be filled. So, and it's already approved with the DES
So DES
for dredging
for,
for the existing array. So we're just opening back up that trench that they already dug and connecting to it and then filling it is what we're doing.
So your DES wetlands permit also includes, or does this new trench not impact the wetlands?
This one connecting the two.
Like a little bit. It's good to connect it, just, yeah, just. That's why we have the wetland permit too.
Okay, so all right.
Yeah.
So that's all part of the wetland permit.
It's
is
part
the
of it,
connection.
yes. Yes, for the dredge and fill and yes, temporary disturbance, and then the DES recommended that soil vegetation goes back to the way it's supposed to be. And exactly to the point of replanting the vegetation that was recommended and so forth.
I can send this back, I know.
Yeah, I should have asked if you guys were gonna have it on a screen sometimes, but yeah. I could have printed a bigger copy.
And where is the prime wetland boundary?
It's like on the north. side.
It's behind the property line.
Is it
No,
not?
no, no, no.
It's not
If the
visible?
array is 100
Sorry.
feet, then 150-foot boundary would be farther up on the
Yeah,
property.
so the buffer isn't drawn on.
The buffers, and that's the same for the other wetland, also the buffers are not drawn.
It's kind of better shown on this thing.
That's still.
It goes
Well,
about,
right.
to the, it's 152
Right,
feet to the
but-
front of the old one, and it's kind of a line, so you can sort of,
Right, but I'm just saying the plans should
Yeah.
have
yeah.
So what I think we would want is whatever's the furthest, so maybe it's whether it's the prime or the regular, we would want a line that shows the extent of the buffer so that the buffer markers can be put on that line, right?
But it's just weird because there's like two different things with different buffers and
Right.
coming from different directions.
Right. And that's where also it's hard to see, basically, I don't know, probably your whole backyard is buffer. Dave,
I mean,
That way, you didn't know that when we bought it.
the house is built in a buffer. I mean, the whole property. I imagine all the properties around the
well,
pond.
what it was is prime wetland is designated after the houses.
Yeah, well, that's what happens, yeah, and then they're kind of grandfathered in, right? And then it's brought up when we do
Right, when.
renovations or structures,
Mhm.
exactly.
So I think it would be helpful though if we could, and so on here, it's noted that the wetland buffer is 75 feet. Is that accurate for this? No? Is it?
And there's something about like
Is it,
very poorly drained soils.
Is it
soils
very
of
poor?
20,
Yeah.
25 feet.
if it's very poorly drained, it would be 75 feet.
So that would be something to ask Mr. West, is if it is a very poorly drained wetland, if that's why the 75-foot wetland buffer was applied, or if that's an error.
I'm also trying to think back. Is that line is the wetland buffer, so I think I don't know, oh my God. I need my
This
computer.
has two wetland limits on it that overlap.
Yeah.
Well, I would say the new array is gonna be within the prime,
It definitely, 105
Yes,
feet.
yes, it is within the prime.
but the question is whether it's overlapping with the other.
It is.
wetland.
It is.
But
It is,
by how
if
mu-
it's
but
4
by
feet
how
away.
much?
4 feet away from it.
Right, but by how much and how much of this is temporarily impacted?
I think
Right,
the practical question is, where do the buffer markers go,
yeah.
right?
Are those actually required by law? I understood from the conservation committee that not.
By your ordinance, yeah, they are. We never said they were not, no. Yeah, no, we never said they were not required.
Does the 150-foot offset to the prime wetland? Is that like the most restrictive of the, like if you offset that line 150 feet, does it capture all of the other buffer impacts from the other wetlands? I guess you need that other figure, the color.
No.
What was that?
It doesn't.
It doesn't?
Because the wetland comes up significantly higher. The old array, if you look at just the side of just the uphill side towards the house of the new array, that's where the wetland line is.
Yeah.
And so that's
Much further.
close to the 150-foot from the prime wetland. So it's gotta be.
Yeah.
There.
either 50 or 75 feet beyond that.
I mean, we don't know if there's other wetlands too, like maybe the whole thing is a wetland buffer. Then where do you put the markers?
And it might not be relevant, but,
Usually we do have it all on there, so I'm wondering if it's off the map. They zoom, so when I say they are designers, we don't make the overlay plans. They have to kind of zoom in, so you never really see a full out, zoomed out plot map with all the abutters and.
Well, also there's no scale map to really measure things.
in the bottom left. Right here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's 75 feet, okay. All right, thank you.
I would guess that wetland boundary is gonna be that it's gonna be the one that's,
Yes.
like, the prime isn't gonna be the most restrictive of that, it's gonna be the.
But it's within both the prime and the non-prime.
Yeah, not disagreeing there.
We also don't know if there's other wetlands on there either, right? Like they just delineated that wetland because it was the one that was applicable to what they're doing. Right, like you guys didn't look at all the wetlands.
Well, he looked at the property where we were gonna put the solar array, I guess, but he didn't go to the neighbors.
Right, yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm just what I'm saying is like, you're gonna put like wetland buffer markers up because there's a wetland here, like. There could be a wetland here that we don't know about, or there could be a wetland over here and you offset that, then the line's gonna be different. It's not representative of what,
Yes.
you know what I mean? I don't know. I just don't know that putting wetland buffers markers would necessarily be accurate unless you were.
Right,
do the whole
right,
thing.
right. I guess the other thing is, does the 500 I guess the other thing is it's hard to calculate the wetland buffer impact because we can't see the wetland buffer lines here. I don't know what it.
Thing is in the buffer, right? I think it's.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think we've included the original, you asked us to update the square footage for the impact area, so it includes both arrays, the entire.
Okay, and what about the access area?
Well, that's temporary, so I didn't imagine, I mean, we're talking about temporary, I mean, that's like putting a lawnmower back there.
Well,
So
it's
it's a temporary trench and temporary machine access. But I guess that's why we're here, right? To see what.
You're not doing anything to improve that, like you're not putting gravel down or anything, it's just, you're just.
That would be worse, I think.
Yeah, I know, I wanted.
Yeah, yeah, where, I think the ground screws are the best case scenario. So have
You're
you,
also talking about access, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, like,
No.
putting anything to access to.
Like building a road.
we have
Oh,
ground
yeah.
protection mats. They're big.
Okay,
Oh, like timber mats?
so, yeah, so do you describe that anywhere?
No, I think I put it in like we can install it, so I thought that would be in the conditional approval. Like
Yes.
like if we need to fence off an area or use, that's what I need your kind of recommendations for.
But it would be.
We,
Good to know that this is a possibility or the mats, using the mats and such, because that's.
yes, the ground, so the equipment is on skids, so tracks, so the ground protection mats definitely and handy in those cases.
We don't distinguish between temporary or permanent, do we?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Yes, that's something we'll have to
Not the way
talk about.
Does the square footage that they've asked for include temporary impacts?
I don't think so.
I don't think
I
so.
think those just included the two arrays themselves, right?
Just the square footage of the array?
Did you include impact, not for the trenches either, because that's temporary?
Yeah, it's temporary, so.
I mean, this. The impact is not like, the total area of the array? Is it, it's just what goes into the ground?
Well, it's blocking water from
An impervious
It's got to be
service.
falling between the rain and the ground, right? It's blocking.
So that's an impact, just be, okay.
Probably not as much of an impact as a full structure
Yeah.
would be, but it's still an impact.
Okay.
Again, I'll just ask to remind you, think about the net, right? Heat pumps, electric car, you know, these ground screws, they don't take much. The trench heals over, I can tell you that because we had that first one put in and it's, can't see it, there's no permanent impact that's visible. And I don't even think, I mean, they're gonna have trouble finding it, poke around for that. So just, you know, yes, we know it's in the buffer, but the purpose of these laws, I believe, right, is to control environment. And I think that if you look at this project as a whole, that's the bottom line. And I would also suggest that, while you might like to have those buffers better delineated on the map, asking me to pay for that too, like that has bumped up these prices already beyond the cost of what it costs to put in solar. Again, I mentioned that $3,000 figure, that was on top of everything else because of the mess with the first array, the after the fact permit. But having to get that other border surveyed out too.
Well, they have to be surveyed out, you just have to offset.
Well, you have a wetland delineated, so measure, I mean, it doesn't have to be done in CAD. You know, if somebody marked it off on a map to scale using that more exact line, you know, I
We
think.
could measure from the stakes that are there. We could measure out what the buffers are. Like, we can do that ourselves. That, no problem. You want us to do that? Absolutely. But I just don't want to have another multi-$1,000
So
bill.
the problem is that this is an application for a conditional use for impacts to wetland buffers. So like, we have to know where they are.
It's everywhere.
You know,
We're gonna be in the wetland
Because you know you're in
buffer.
wetland. So there's no question that you're in the buffer.
Right, but we don't know how much, and I think temporary impacts, we've counted. I mean, because the state counts temporary impacts. And when people come in here, whenever source comes in here, whatever, it's a temporary impact plus a permanent impact.
And I mean, I can tell you, we've reviewed a lot of these and I can't remember there ever being a site plan that we've looked at where we haven't seen a buffer line on it.
No, it usually does, and I'm curious why it doesn't, and I'm wondering if it doesn't just fit on here. I'm telling you, this project has been in the work for 2 years.
Our office was down.
I am-
First started.
I'm trying to like pick I don't even do this anymore as a job, like I work. Like, so I'm trying to like sit down and remember, like I remember having a conversation with the homeowner years ago. I remember hiring, you know, the whole DES process took forever. The surveying took forever and you got to do it by season. So we're all trying to just pick up the pieces. And unfortunately, this all started because the original installer didn't do their due diligence. And now we're picking up the pieces and the poor homeowner has to pay these expenses that I don't think are fair, but he's doing
But the
them.
new array is a new.
But it is. So if he didn't have the existing array, I'll just say flat out, we would probably say, no, we're not, no. But he's willing to get the wetland scientist. We've had the conversation. Usually it's a no. But he already has an array. He knows he needs more power. So if that existing array got approved and he did the due diligence with the wetland scientist and the surveyor to do that due diligence, that did get approved. The Conservation Commission, I know, did a walk. I know all of those steps were happening. That's why we're at this point. So we're like, okay. And no matter where we put it, I know for a fact, like just thinking, there is not one location we could put this that's not within the buffer. The entire array is going to be in a buffer.
And the wetland scientists determined there wasn't an impact, I believe is what you said at the beginning of the meeting. Is that right, Becky?
Yeah, there's not a direct impact to the function.
Buffer, but even if
It's not a direct impact.
Perfect.
Mhm.
the assessment of the wetland scientist was that there was no impact.
So I would say, you know, the ordinance, I get it, is to protect the, you know, the health and safety of the public. You know, it's not gonna.
Wildlife habitat. and
The
water
wild,
quality.
yes. So we've done the habitat, we did the natural heritage, you know, the Blandings turtle came up and the DES still approved. Like the DES to me is the highest power. And then it trickles down to the town. And if the DES says yes, what I'm told is the town
Right, but-
says yes.
Right, but their jurisdiction is the wetland, their jurisdiction is not the buffer. And the thing is,
Yeah.
they have requirements for their maps and we have requirements for ours. Like I said, if you can measure it off, it says the array is 105 from the boundary of Turi. Can you just figure out where 150 would be on this map?
Yeah, that's not a problem. I don't know why it's not on there, like I said.
It doesn't,
Like-
it can be done by hand. I'm not saying that you have to have,
Yeah.
a CAD or a wetland scientist, but the thing is that you have some information and using the delineation, and I guess if you can find out whether that wetland was that the other array is very poorly drained or not, because on that 75-foot buffer.
So even with the buffer though, I guess what I'm getting at is it's going to be in the buffer. We're not, so what is the buffer doing? I get it. We can put the line on there, but I don't. The function,
You're wondering what an
I just-
acceptable
yeah,
tolerance would be?
Some of it's, helpful information, down the line also. It's a record of what's there.
okay,
And what's proposed. So it's not just, we're gonna approve it. Do you need it? It's like, yeah, because this is part of the process and this is how we document things.
mhm. So we can definitely update the site plan to include that line. And we can also, if it helps, we can do a zoomed out version to see all of the wetland lines, but you're gonna not see the details anymore. Like the solar arrays are gonna look like they're right on the line at that point. The trench, you're not gonna have that detail. So so we can definitely add it on this plan. And then I know there was other concerns about what about the bigger area? Like where's the other wetland line? So,
Yeah, I think the two wetland line, the buffer lines we need to.
Sandy, I don't know what good that is because I feel like there's lots of wetlands. I don't know that. Maybe there's not. But like, why put wetland markers up if it's not the right line?
But I wasn't talking about the wetland markers. I'm just talking about having
Oh.
a documentation. I'm not talking about the markers.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
No, I wasn't
Yeah.
talking about the markers. I'm just talking about,
She is basically saying that we have a wetland boundary line, we have a prime
mhm.
wetland boundary line. Where is the,
the line for those buffers.
Yeah,
Like
the buffers.
Adam, you said, this is a conditional use permit for impacts of the buffer, but we can't see,
the buffer?
where the buffer lines are. And if you do one in solid and one in dotted or dashed or something to show them differently,
Mhm.
that's fine, but it could be measured off by hand, but we really should have
Yeah.
some.
I mean, I think that we all understand now, I mean, we had to ask more questions than normal, but I think that we understand, where all the lines are. We understand that it appears that it's put in the right spot. I think that the request for the amount of impact probably needs to be increased for the 70-foot trench.
I think that's where the buffer really impacts, is if you want that trench included, then I don't think it's gonna be the whole trench. It's probably just gonna be partial,
Mhm.
depending on the other wetland, but yeah.
Isn't it all in the buffer though?
It might be, I thought it was all on the bar. I have to,
Yeah.
I gotta
I mean-
pull up the, like the
I mean,
granite.
it's not,
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
visually
Like,
looking at the
'cause if
scale.
if you look at the prime in 150
Yeah.
versus 152, probably 2 feet of that 70-foot trench is probably not gonna be in it.
Very little, yeah.
There may be the overlap. What I don't know is like, where does the other boundary that's coming from the right-hand side?
It all
of the
depends
property?
whether the other buffer is 50 feet or 75.
Right.
Where, and when you say 50 feet, what's the 50-foot buffer?
That's for
It's
regular.
on poorly drained wetlands.
50
That was-
foot is poorly drained,
Oh, poorly versus.
Right.
and the 75 is very, okay.
And surface areas are very poorly drained.
And there's very, very.
Very, very, okay.
It's like 100.
No, actually, there's somewhat.
And then there's somewhat, okay.
So you'll need to check. with-
And we didn't even have like a 50 option on here. Yeah,
Yeah, so you'll need to check with the wetland scientists to find out.
Okay.
what it is, and then apply the appropriate buffer.
I would be just a bunch of procedural things that we were supposed to do.
Yeah, we
No.
kind of jumped in.
Like accepting it
Yeah.
and,
We haven't gotten to that point because we had discussion.
all right.
Accepting it as complete and then it's a public hearing too.
Right, yes, yeah.
Pull out those handy.
I don't
dandy,
have mine.
I never had one.
All right, so I guess we need to.
Yeah. We're on number 2.
Our number 2.
The second bullet.
Well, I don't know that it's fully complete. You would want to see the revision with the
Well,
technical.
we can accept it as
With the
complete.
condition that,
Yeah, I mean, I think that we
It's an
understand.
application. It's.
Yeah,
I'll make a motion to accept application 406-24 as complete with the condition that the boundaries for the wetland and the prime wetland are revised. The buffer is revised on the site plan.
second,
Adam, you second?
I did.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay. All right, and I guess we need to open the public hearing. Any comments on this application? Concerns? No,
A lot of Q and A.
close the public hearing.
So you wanna talk about racial impact?
Yes, there's,
I'll make a motion that there's no regional impact for application 406-24.
second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Now we're moving through the steps. So there were no waivers requested. Let's say the functional assessment wasn't provided in the way that we usually receive.
Yeah, did you provide,
I basically verbally provided the functional assessment when I sat down.
well, I guess you had said that wetland scientist, because the wetland scientist is supposed
So
to.
wetland scientists explain the functions of it's a wet meadow. And then that the functions of the wetland are not, if you look at the wetland application to the DES, he says it in there that given the size of especially the existing array, and the current just conditions, that there's absolutely no.
Right, but the functional assessment looks at the wetland without talking about the impact.
So if he didn't provide something that he was supposed to, I assume that was supposed to be for the DES.
See, that it's usually a checklist, but the thing is that we have a requirement for a functional assessment. I guess we're looking to see, was it in the DES package? I don't have the whole package here, but
I don't have the revisions too that he sent the DES.
Oh, that-
I just know that the DES approved it
Right.
with conditions that, you know, the vegetation stays maintained. So again, that's my cue to say, okay, we can now apply for the new array. Cause quite honestly, we wanted nothing to do with the existing one, cause we didn't, it's not our system.
Right.
So once the DES approved it, we were like, okay, fair game, now we can come here. So, so yeah, we provided everything that we absolutely could provide. And if you need a formal waiver, I don't know how to go about requesting that. Verbally. So, I mean, I would like to request a waiver if it's not in there, given that the DES did approve it already and there was an actual wetland scientist out there. I don't think the extra step is worth hiring him to write something
No,
about this.
sometimes the application, there is a form that DES has
Mhm,
that you can do a functional assessment
mhm.
checklist. And I don't recall whether it was in the package. I don't have.
Yeah.
There was nothing by that name.
No,
Yeah.
okay.
Another thing to note too that we didn't talk about that I think is helpful, sorry, is the array is actually pointed away from the wetlands. So it,
Mhm.
you know, come off the wetland and then
Right.
flow back underneath. I mean, I think that that's,
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's at the 35-degree tilt facing downhill away from Turry Pond. So any of that rainwater is just gonna come away from the pond and just continue to drain as it really has been naturally for,
oh wait, which way is it graded?
Yeah,
to?
which way does the slope go? It goes.
It goes to the south,
I assumed
which is
it-
toward,
down.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
saying
I
down,
assumed it went-
Sorry.
but it's away from Turry Pond.
Away from Turry Pond,
So the wetlands are higher than the,
In the one array, yeah.
like
it's
a high meadow, a high wet meadow.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
That's why we didn't know they were.
I think that's. And then to go back, why this was built and inspected, I bet you nobody caught it. Because like I said, the original installers did get a permit, built it. It got inspected, it got turned on. It went through all the proper steps and nobody caught that it was a
That's
wetland.
why wet sneaker test doesn't. Actually, it was pretty wet when we were out there.
I mean, it may be, and it also depends on the time of year
Yes, yeah.
and the seasons. You
Yes.
know, we just had what, El Nino and
Right.
and wet.
It has.
Yeah, I'm learning lots about wetlands right now.
Board want to consider that waiver request now?
yeah,
Is that a motion or
so moved. So,
And who's seconding?
I'll second.
Wait.
Who made the motion? Yeah, second.
On motion?
No, he made the motion.
Okay, John made the motion, Adam seconded.
So I'm just gonna say, or do you want to do it? or do you- Okay.
I'll make a motion. For the waiver for application 406-24. And
To waive the requirement for a functional assessment.
That's in, yeah, two.
section.
Yes.
Section 2B.
1001, 10.01 F to B.
Adam second.
A new vote. All those in favor?
All right,
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
So what do we do? Well, we haven't gotten to what are we doing in terms of the plan?
Do you want to see that buffer line before you approve it? Do you want to make it a condition of approval that we get it for the file for the future?
yeah, I think we know that we know where it is kind of, but it should be on the
You want to
plan.
document?
Well,
Yeah.
and the additional impact from the trenching.
Yeah, we gotta have
Plus
that.
the trench.
Yeah. And I think there should be a condition that the wetlands are clearly marked before they start construction.
And then there was the ground protection mats and the clearly marked, and then we can put up signage, or we can rope it off, or however you guys, I don't know how you want to phrase it in the conditional approval, but
If
we
you have
can
a
make
preference, we're
sure.
happy to-
Whatever you think will keep the machines out of it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah, and they don't
I'd
have.
like to allow the wildlife to,
Likewise. Yeah.
No, this isn't, yeah, this isn't a motion, we're just
No.
discussing.
Okay,
we're,
so-
we're just making the list.
For,
This is French square footage, ground protection mats,
I'm,
Do you want
very fence.
there any conditions related to mowing frequency and area and or plants? I know I heard maybe that there are some native plants on their way already.
It's already a condition of the after the fact permit and.
From the state.
They were supposed to arrive late May, early June, we're still waiting. Yeah, that would be.
What area are those plants going?
You're looking towards the pond, the sort of the top left corner.
So behind the panels?
Yeah, behind the existing noise.
Hmm.
So it sounds like they act as like a buffer to catch
Mhm.
drainage.
To be
Yeah.
additional buffer.
Yeah, what we're gonna do is just not mow that particular section anymore.
Mhm.
Look at some stuff that doesn't have to get done. Just anything that's our strong control.
so we don't need that, that's a condition.
It's already a condition.
Sounds like that's been
Right,
covered.
right.
So I've got first condition, prime and wetland buffers get included on the plan. The second is revising the total impact, including the temporary. The third is
Ground, use of ground protection mats.
ground mat protection.
And partitioned wetlands.
And then kind of cordon off the, actually, I mean, technically, you should cordon off. If you said you were gonna be 4 foot from the wetland, you really should be cordoning off from 4 feet.
Mhm.
You know, but it's because otherwise you're not representing the impact in the buffer.
Needing like a do not disturb. Yeah,
Right.
do not disturb this area.
Right.
Yeah, you shouldn't be encroaching any further than
In the buffer.
the impacts that have been documented on this plan.
What do they need to increase to account for that, like doing work around it?
Yeah,
Is that an
does the
impact?
equipment
Like,
need
just-
to go all the way around the panel to
No,
itself?
it can go right in the front, right in, just it goes right in the front, and then the mast just puts the ground screws in.
And then
They'll start from the back row and then I'll do the front row. So it doesn't have to like go
It doesn't have to
circle
go
around.
around.
Yeah. And then the installation team, you know, those are people walking over there with panels and they don't even need to, you know, they would just go again, the front and then put the back panels up and then the front.
I have those 4 conditions. Am I missing any?
So are we saying no buffer markers?
And I just don't know if it would be right, if they would be right.
Sir?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know where the buffer ends to know what.
I know.
I mean, to even say, you know, put them in a couple of places on the property, I don't even know what. I'd agree that they don't have to be every 50 feet, but it would be good to add some buffer markers.
Usually they wear it in there, the little orange line. I don't know why they're not there.
I'll talk to Mike about it.
There's a reason. I know there's.
We could maybe. I think it would be fair to put a buffer marker in for the prime wetland, because we know where that is. Right, that would. But I don't know about the other wetlands.
All right. 5 condition. Anything else? Before I make the motion? You have anything else, Andy? All right, I'll make a motion to conditionally approve application 406-24 with the following conditions. One, the prime and wetland buffers are noted on the site plan. The second, revise the total impact, including the temporary. Number 3, to utilize ground mats for protection during the temporary construction. The 4th, to section off and prevent further encroachment to the wetland impact and wetland buffer impact. And the 5th, to delineate and mark the, to mark the prime wetland buffer.
In the field, like in the field.
In the field.
With wetland buffer
Yeah.
buffer markers.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Can we lay out a couple findings of fact? Should be that they met the criteria listed in 10.01 and 12.05.
Yep.
Do we want to say anything about them
Yeah.
sloping away from the wetlands and?
Say
I did. Myself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that there,
Great slopes
the
away.
array slopes away from the wetland and the ground slopes away from the wetland, I guess. Everything slopes away from the wetland.
Well, not really, because the yard slopes to the wetland. The array is clearly in the opposite direction, so the
Well, no,
array,
they said
wait,
that the
which way?
topo goes
No.
goes towards the house.
Go.
the house is the highest point and then it's,
Yeah, that's why I was confused.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So then the panels slope away from the wetland,
right,
not the land, just the
okay.
I'd also just note or reiterate the minimal impact per the wetland scientist report.
Right, a minimum impact or no impact on the function of
Functionality,
the
yeah.
wetland based on the wetland scientist's report.
Correct.
I think that's great finding. I think that's great, guys. Somebody want to make a motion to accept those as the findings of fact?
so moved.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
You made them.
No, well, he made
Oh, he made them. Oh, you seconded, sorry.
we got this.
Any opposed? Okay. You're all set.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you all very much.
All right.
Thank you.
I so appreciate the volunteering you're doing.
Yes. Have a great night.
I'm recusing myself for the next two applications.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Next we have, application 501-24 Tyler Builders, subdivision application for 3-lot residential subdivision. Be accessed by a shared driveway and serviced by individual wells and individual septic systems, and application 401-24. Tyler Builders, wetland protection conditional use permit for driveway crossing, impact 1,250 square feet of wetland. And 10,120 square feet of wetland buffer to access 3 residential lots.
Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Baskerville, Bedford Design Consultants. It's been a while since I've been here. Do you have a preferred spot for the board? May I have it next to me or?
People tend to stand over there.
Okay.
Kind of better though, get some people on the thing can see.
Oh.
Oops, well, I can move the camera.
Uh,
Yeah, I usually move the camera over. Oh, what? Never mind.
Robert, did you say
One more time.
your last name?
Oh, Baskerville, B as in Bravo, Askerville. I'm with Bedford Design Consultants. Also with me is the owner, Alan Dutrow of Tyler Builders. And Pat Pansiaco, our attorney, who did the presentation to the zoning board. Craig Francisco of my office was here March 21st to go over this. This is Al's Ways subdivision on Brown Hill Road. I think all the members here that meeting.
We've had a few meetings. I think everyone's pretty familiar at this point.
Real quick, it's a 3-lot subdivision. I've got a 4-acre lot, a 7-acre lot, and a 4-acre lot. All of them have a little bit of frontage on the road. They went into the zoning board in November. November 21st. Went over the width of the lots here in the frontage, and the zoning board approved everything to do with the frontage and the lots at that point. So what I'm basically gonna cover tonight, a big issue then was the site distance. And you asked for a third-party review. Steve Pernow has probably done, almost positive he has, more traffic studies analysis than anybody in the state for the last 40 years. And so we went to him, had him do a study. And I have to hit right to that. Apparently, there was a note that according to the website, his license is expired. Didn't have a chance to talk to him. I don't know that he's applied for retired status or what, but regardless, he's been doing this for 40 years. He's still the expert in the state. And he won't stamp the actual plans. I'm a professional engineer, by the way. So since then, what happened? The owner met and Craig met with the driveway permit. Road agent?
Public Works Director.
Code enforcement or?
Public Works Director.
Looked at the intersection. Submitted a driveway permit, and he just wrote they were denied on it and turned it back to us. So technically, we've been denied for the wetland permit. So for Steve and for you, we did one plan just to talk about site distance. This is the plan looking down. This is a profile of what it looks like. High up here, it goes down here. You can see that height is not an issue. Sometimes you can curve. The road itself will be in the way. This goes downhill at a fairly steady slope down this way. So the height of the road isn't an issue. And this is so small. I took it and blew it up. I've got copies of this if you want to put a couple on the table. It's just easier to see. Here's your shared driveway. There'll be a recorded agreement between the 3 owners for access and responsibility for that driveway. Let me go through this first. Everybody's probably heard about it, but I don't know whether you've actually seen it. Everybody talks about the AASHTO book, AASHTO, the American Association of State and Highway Transportation Officials. This is the book. This is the Bible, and I'll pass it around because it's mind-blowing how small the print is and how heavy this thing is. But that's for every road, regardless how big. Biggest interstate in the country, that covers it. So a lot of the regs you read is for that book, and they try to do a regulation for every road and every intersection in the whole country. Using that and Steve's letter, which I think is very well written. Right here someplace. Is in your packet. The first sentence is paragraph number 1. This says what that says to do. If you're on South Willow Street, in an intersection someplace, they assume that your car is so far back from the right of way that your eye, where you're sitting in the driver's seat, is 14.5 feet away from the white line. It's typically at a big intersection. It'll be about a 5-foot gap, then they'll put a white line, and you're supposed to park behind that. Using that, if you argue 275 required, I'm about 5 feet into this person's lot. I'm about 3 feet into this person's lot. So from a vertical standpoint, you can see, but we can't cut trees on their lot. So that doesn't work. What he says in paragraph 2 suggests that in New Hampshire, I've always lived on. I lived on Old Route 27 in Hampton. Real narrow road, much smaller than allowed today. Lots of vegetation, and what everybody does, you don't stop 14.5 feet back. You edge your car up nice and close. So I guess what they talked about last time is what happens if you're 10 feet away. And if you go from your bumper to you, 10 feet still means you're stopping 4 or 5 feet behind the white line with your bumper. So from 10 feet away.
I'll interrupt you really quick.
Sure.
Sorry, when you talk, were we talking about the top front of your bumper being 10 feet back or the driver's?
Right.
Okay, so your front of your car is sticking out beyond.
Correct.
Just want to clarify that.
And I was gonna go measure today from the bumper to my eye. I think my car is 15 feet long, 16 feet long. You're probably about a third of the way back. You're probably 6 feet back from the front of your bumper to where you sit, depending on your car. You know, a lot of cars are longer and pickup trucks have more in the back. But you're closer to the front of a car than you are to the back, and I think every car. So what they talked about last time, and I'm just going through this step by step. And I'm an engineer, so I love doing this. So if it get really boring, if I get really bad, tell me. So there's a lot of yellow lines here. So looking downhill toward the north, people coming down southbound. If you're 10 feet back from the white line, I've got my 275 looking downhill. Fine. Looking this way from 10 feet back, I've only got 215 feet. And that's what Steve starts talking about in his analysis. Then we do one more line is, let's say that you pull right up, you still can't see good, you pull right up, so your bumper's right in the edge of traffic. And now you're 6 feet back. Then I do have the 275. So I can see 275 in each way if you pull up and inch your car up and take a look, but it doesn't meet the big book. And Steve doesn't get into it too much, but I also brought little brother. I think that's 2011, this was 2019. The same organization, AASHTO, American Association of State and Highway Transportation Officials, took a long time to finally remember that acronym, did guidelines for low volume roads. What they consider low volume is 2,000 cars a day. So think of a 190 lot subdivision, one road in and out. They still consider that low volume from their perspective. And then I put a few tabs in here of pages that cover low value roads, even for new construction. When you take a look at and there's a table here in this last one, recommended site distance guidelines for construction of new intersections, not a driveway, but intersections of roads. For a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, they have a site distance of 140, which is way less than the 275. So you get this, how much traffic is there? What's the road? What's the risk? But this goes into a lot more. What's existing on most small roads in a town like Bow. So going through what Steve said, he says what you do in New Hampshire, and everybody does it. You pull up to the highway, you start inching up slowly. So from the 10-foot line, I got 275 here, which is fine. This way, I've got to pull up with my bumper close to the edge to get 275. So you do it. That book would say 275 is more than what he thinks is needed. And he also talks then about the other reason to do this is A, so you can see what's coming. And then if people are coming downhill, when can they see you? So if you pull out, do they have room? You know, these people are driving on this side of the road where you pull out first. These are coming down the far lane. When you go to his back page, and that's where he says, yes, that with the 6-foot setback, you can see the 275. And he goes on and on about some details. I won't read every word. And this is where he gets into the talk about sight distance of what can you see. is what can the person driving up to you see, the approach distance? And it says to conclude, the plan demonstrates that the drivers on Brown Hill Road approaching the intersection will be able to see any vehicle stopped on the shared driveway. Approach a significant distance in advance of the intersection and come to a full stop if needed. We recommend a stop sign, a white stripe bar, a short section of double yellow line installed on the shared driveway. In other words, you see that on a more major road, the double line down the middle of the road. So for 50 feet, just so people pulling in and going in on the right side, up that, not the wrong side. With proper trimming of roadside vegetation within the avenue, we expect this intersection will operate nominally from a traffic operations capacity and safety standpoint. One thing I want to point out about your regs too. In your driveway regulations. Just to talk about, do you have the authority to waive this? And I think this is written very well. It starts out by saying, in cases where the planning board has not determined the minimum adequate site distance via subdivision or site plan review. All season safe driving assistance shall comply with recommendation of AASHTO, the big one. This is the one that just everybody refers to, but this is really for major roads, if not for the small stuff like the little guy road. And then for driveways with 1 or 2 family dwellings, they want 275 feet. The last sentence is unless all season safe site distance can be obtained, the driveway shall be located at that location the public works director determines to be safest. So basically it says if you can't get it, you can't decide where your driveway goes. The public works director determines where the driveway has to go. So I'm reading this. I don't think there's any doubt you have the authority to do this as part of the subdivision approval. A little history of this. So this subdivision originally, going back to the first one, was approved in 1973. They went in and subdivided off 4 frontage lots. Everybody likes to reduce, you can make some income without building the road. Like a 60-foot right of way with flares at the ends you can turn. I've done that hundreds of times. I'm 68, I've done this a long time. This is what you do when you plan to put a road in to develop the background. I mean, so that was the intent at the time. I think this is still a 2-rod road. One problem we have too is very narrow right of way. Most people on a 50 or 60-foot right of way, which is what this is. The road itself is very narrow. So you don't have the right to cut very far from the yellow line because the town doesn't own it. These people did. And at the time, the town could have asked, I think it was in the regulations, asked for a wider road. That would have been the time to do it. But they didn't do it at the time. So this was the location down in 73 across from Bona Vista. I don't know if this is there. They had the right to pull it back. They have more room to trim the vegetation, and they didn't do it. So one of the big problems is, if this was a 50-foot wide or 65 or 60-foot right of way, I would be able to do the safe site distance. I'd be able to trim that vegetation. But being the narrow right of way, we don't have the right to trim it. Boy, I'd love to talk some more, but I'm going to try to wrap this up. Again, a variance was granted. My understanding is an agreement has been reached with one of the abutters. I believe the Duke property. We're just going to provide landscaping and she can decide where to put it. Just inside our property, on her property. We don't really care where she puts it. So he's going to donate landscaping to her. Donate might not be the wrong line. There were a lot of other conditions on the previous meeting in March. I think the one of the fire department went away because the previous fire department had agreed that with. Everything else we're okay with is a condition of approval or coming back later. To the best of my knowledge, again, I'm taking over for Craig. That's the only issue. And for myself as a professional engineer, And you don't know how many times I've gone to planning board meetings all over the state. Anytime there's a big project, it would always be Steve standing up front, doing the studies for everybody. With that, I don't want to bore you too much longer, I could. Questions?
Can I just explain a little bit more procedurally about the driveway permit? So the Public Works Director made the decision to deny the driveway permit because site distance was according to the regulations. The applicant has requested to appeal that decision to the planning board as it lays out in the driveway regulations as the next step available to them. So now it's the role of the planning board to decide whether or not to grant that appeal and to waive the site distance requirement. I did speak to the town's attorney about this, and I think I can reiterate his advice without needing to go into non-public, because his advice is to weigh the evidence that was presented to you and decide what's right. So I think he's absolutely right. Steve Perna is the traffic engineer that everyone goes to for these types of things. And he's definitely an expert, and I think it is very helpful to have his opinion documented like this. If you were to grant the appeal and waive site distance, I think that this document would certainly support the decision if you went that direction.
Was the site distance issue the only reason that Tim denied the driveway?
Yes, we did have some other concerns that I believe were worked out about the space available for all of the trash and recycling bins and everything that would be there. And I believe that you guys looked at it in the field and
There was enough,
room.
yes, there was plenty of room for trash and snow removal and what have you, yeah.
I think I heard a comment too, that the abutting driveways don't really have good sight distance either. By us cutting all the trees in our right of way, it might improve their visibility also.
No, and
That's a
you,
definite, yes.
there was no other issue with the other direct abutter? Or was there?
I think Al approached both abutters and asked, can I do an easement and pay to trim your trees?
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure they both said no.
Okay,
So one of them, he's reached an agreement. He's still not gonna cut the trees, but I think their garage is close to it. So he's gonna put in his landscaping, not to help her hurt the site distance, but to give her more buffering from the driveway.
and that's further back from the road
Yes,
going in?
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
not gonna have anything to do with what you can point out. It will be further back.
Based on the edge of.
so I think this is her garage. Her garage is very close
Yeah.
to
Right, okay,
the property line. So where she wants the trees, she may want to wait that day and go, I want one here, I want one here.
Yeah,
Where
determine,
they go,
depending exactly where
right?
you might want them planted at the time or on site, will determine that and make that decision.
and have you agreed to size or years, like how mature?
Actually, she kind of picked the trees that she wanted.
And so you two have come to a mutual
Yes.
agreement on that?
Yeah, I actually agreed to pay for the ones that she had picked up. Which I thought they were a little expensive, but it is what it is.
Everything's expensive.
Everything's expensive.
It's one of those things where we can say like, oh, I'll put some plants in. Is it gonna be a 8-inch annual petunia? Or is it gonna be,
I can, I think you agreed on a dollar amount. Pick what you want, here's the dollar amount. Because you get less bigger trees? Or do you get it, because I guess there's lawn there now, or do you put in rhododendron that are gonna not grow up tall? You want the shorter buffer,
Mhm.
rather than pine trees and maples. I would think. And she can chip in during public comment.
Okay.
Yes.
We already accepted this as complete, right? So this is just.
Right, in March.
So,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this is done through all of those things.
There's another public hearing.
Yeah, it's kind of all part of the same. I think it's just kind of being considered as part of the subdivision application.
I just, so I agree with what everybody says about Steve. I respect his opinions on his traffic studies. I'm concerned about having to go right up to the edge of the road. Like normally is it 14 and a half? Is that the?
14 and a half is what the big book says.
Right.
But if you put it in a Walmart, that's where people stop. The first go to Walmart is 14 and a half feet back.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just me. I'm on Harvey Road in Manchester. And there's no trees in my way.
Yeah. The other,
My bumper's at the white line before I
yeah.
look both ways and make my turn.
And the other piece, there's that piece and the other piece is the hill coming down to it.
Correct.
And
You're going downhill.
in the wintertime, someone's gotta hit their brakes or even people biking down the hill, like bikes don't have the same level of stopping power.
Right. But I think there's three things with that. One, if you nose up to the edge, you got the 275. Two, per that book and Steve, Astro doesn't recommend 275. They've got shorter numbers for any roads and especially for low volume roads.
Yeah.
But their impact of low volume is still, for a town like Bow, a major road.
And do they have different calculations? I noticed that book contained,
God.
calculate curvature and
Hill.
yaw and.
And I haven't taken calculus in like 45 years. There's all types of calculus formulas and all those in there. And so generally you
This
go,
one has different formulas.
oh yeah. Typically, this will explain how they did it. They'll give you a table. For this speed on this kind of road, you need this. And that's what that has, is I think the one I had. There's a table. And one side is design speed, starting at 15, going up to 60 miles an hour. How much sight distance do you need? 60 feet when you're low, 350 feet when you're up at 60. And I think that's where the state gets 400 feet for state highways. You go to the DOT, it's just 400 feet for everything. But they're assuming you're on a state highway that's listed at 55 and people are doing 65 or higher. But as I said, in this table 4-10 in that book, the sight distance is 140 feet. And I think we had that.
And people will
easy.
People will be doing 65 on Brown Hill.
There's always that guy, and that's not me. And the third thing is, too, you got the closer lane going uphill. Downhill is in the further lane. So you got the additional 10 feet there. You can be halfway into the road and you're still not, in his lane yet. You take a right, you never go into his lane. And most people pulling out then pull out and start going downhill a little bit, which gives you that extra little space too. So we see this all the time, and you're on the inside of a curve where you're not allowed to cut the trees. It's just such an old road that you only have 33 feet of right of way. So you don't have your 50 or 60 feet. It's just the weird thing about how this is all progressed. I've got a 60-foot driveway going into a 33-foot road.
We probably only had 3,000 people living in town at that time too, so.
So I just want to open it to the public right now for public hearing. So if anybody would like to speak, provide your name.
Yeah, my name is Phil Simons. I live at 54 Brown Hill. The 275-foot mark was established right at my mailbox. And certainly, even from my mailbox, you can't see where that driveway is going to be. But in spite of all the documentation, this is a pretty particular situation because it's a sharp curve coming down the road. The road's probably at a 20 at least a 20-degree, maybe even a 30-degree hill at that point, heading downwards. And what's also relevant is the person driving is not where my mailbox is, he's in the middle of the road. And in spite of the fact that it's a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, the average is really closer to 40. And as near as I can tell, as an amateur, admittedly, you can't see where that driveway is going to be well under 200 feet, certainly in the summer, as things exist now. Even in the winter, you can't, because you're not looking from the mailbox side of the road, you're driving in the middle, which affects the site. These criteria are calculated on a plane, and this is anything. That's all I have to say. I don't think it should be. Did you guys get the petition? You read it, right? Because it was well.
I think she's going to deliver it soon.
Oh. It's very, it's much better written than an amateur. You guys should take it into consideration.
I think just to touch on your point, I think that their plan showed that vertically they meet the site distance. They showed that plan with the topography and the sight line at, whatever the height is. And so they have that. It's just they don't have where the trees are. The trees are blocking the view.
Yeah.
But they have vertically, I think that they have it. Is that right? They had that plan up there that showed the eyesight and the topography and
Right, the hill's not blocking.
the hill's not blocking. The hill's not blocking it. It's the trees.
There are some trees that are within their right of way that are going to be removed that are blocking it now. And once those trees are cut, and is the plan still to request to remove one tree that's in the town's right of way?
What's that?
There was one tree that's in the town's right of way. I believe it was, you're planning to request to remove that one as well.
I think the request was for us to move all the vegetation in the town right away.
Okay.
Yeah, they agreed on that. There was one tree so if you're facing the driveway, there was one tree on the neighbor's property. That's about this big. And that's the one we can't touch.
Right, but there are some trees that are there today that will be removed and which will improve
It's gonna make that much difference.
All right. Next comment.
Jessica Duke, 50 Brown Hill Road. The first thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm not sure procedurally how this works, but I tried to check the video history of the zoning board back in November. There's no video and the meeting minutes are obviously not word for word. And I'm wondering if the zoning board approved this variance with the thinking, I think it was said that they had 275 feet, because for a while it was said in these meetings that they did meet that sightline requirement. I don't know if there's any way to go back, but I'm wondering if the zoning board gave that approval thinking they had that 275 feet, had they known with this updated sightline plan back from June of this year, if they still would have given that approval.
So my memory tells me that the understanding was that the 275 feet of sight distance could be met at that point. And I do know that the ZBA was concerned about sight distance, but they knew also that it would be coming to the planning board for specific review and a driveway permit that would specifically be looking at the sight distance. So they didn't focus on that criteria at that time.
Got it. And like Phil mentioned, the neighbors, we got together and did write a petition. We just came up with the idea yesterday afternoon, so I didn't get as many signatures as I hope. A lot of people are on vacation, but I got 14, and I'll just read the petition and then pass it to the board. So it says, to the Bow Town Planning Board, we respectfully petition the board to uphold the decision made by the Public Works Director to deny a driveway permit to Tyler Builders. The proposed driveway has failed to meet the essential 275-foot sightline requirement in the town's driveway regulation, section 20411, section K. And then I go to just reiterate what that is. And the last sentence in that does say, can be obtained, the driveway shall be located at the location that the public works director determines to be safest. So by denying the driveway application, the public works director has determined that there is no safe location for this driveway. The police department has also highlighted safety concerns due to this deficiency. These standards exist for a reason, to ensure that developments within our town adhere to nationally recognized safety guidelines. Upholding these standards is not just a recommendation, but a responsibility to prioritize the safety of all citizens above any other considerations. And we request that you reject any appeals or variances that compromise these crucial safety measures. Thank you for the attention on this matter. And we have the signature from Brown Hill, and then we also have one from Claymont, which is off of Bona Vista, which is right across. There's that. And then in terms of we have not come to an agreement, I didn't think. On the plantings, I think there was a lot of back and forth between Craig and us out in the parking lot. And I don't think there was any, and this was back in March or whenever it was, I don't think there was any final agreement. I think what I proposed was more money than you initially wanted to spend, which is fine. So I would like it in writing with the planning board that if for that privacy screening, that they be a minimum of 4 feet high. And again, plant species we can talk about, but it wasn't from my understanding that we came to any sort of agreement. It was sort of like, you wanted to spend this, the plan that I proposed with this, and
Well, I remember you emailing Craig about the certain plant that you had
Yeah.
picked out.
and you said that that was too expensive, which I understand, but so I didn't think we came to a formal agreement.
Okay, I understand that, but I did agree with Craig, you know. Once we found out what the number was at first, I think, and we're doing 8 of them, I believe is what it was.
I don't think there was anything in writing on what.
So I said, okay, I'm fine with that. And that was the last time we talked about push or shoot.
Got it. So I just want it in like. In writing that we have that agreement.
But that's all, I think that's all, you know, the board knows about it.
Yeah,
It's all in the works with the plan that we have with your
yeah.
trees on it.
But my hope is that we uphold the denial of the driveway just due to me, the standards are what they are and you can't meet them unless they're really on the edge. So I'll let. If there's any other comment, thank you. Huh?
Image right down the line. Eddie Duke, Jessica's husband, 50 Brown Hill Road. I read Steve's letter. I had some comments on that and some concerns. First, his calculations seem to be at 30, 35 miles an hour. Is that correct?
I think that's what he had, yes.
Yeah. As Jess said, the police came out with a speed tracker last year. The average speed is actually 40. He did his calculations, assuming people drive as they do, approaching, you know, slowly at the stop line. It seems logical to then extend that to the speed in which people are driving. So I think if he did not do his sightlines based on the actual speed people are driving, they should redo them based on that. Because it doesn't seem fair, it seems biased to only sway the numbers one way and not the other. Another issue of public safety in terms of sightlines. He mentioned snow maintenance. He says that the snow maintenance must be kept up in order to maintain the sightlines. Does the town of Bow have any ordinance that can force them to actually maintain the snow properly?
We're talking about on the town road.
No, I'm talking about the driveway, because if there's no ordinance, then they can not follow the recommendation and create a sightline issue. And as you said, the driveways here, mine does not have good sightlines. And in the wintertime, when there's a snowbank, I can't see anything right now. And that's with my snowbank. So if your snowbank and my snowbank are combined, I really can't see anything, and neither can anyone coming into that driveway. Lastly, you have 3 houses on this road.
It's
That's
a driveway.
okay. It's 20 feet wide. There's a stop sign and a stop line. It's a driveway. You have 3 houses. That's a minimum of 3 cars, right? You could have a husband and wife, you could have a kid, you could have an accessory dwelling, you're gonna have landscaping trucks, delivery drivers, you're gonna have holiday parties. You could see 30 or 40 cars going down that driveway easily on the 4th of July, Christmas when it's snowy. There's gonna be a lot of traffic on that road. So, because the sightlines cannot be met and the traffic issues, I would recommend that the town deny the permit, kick it back to the zoning board and try to get it approved for one house. And lastly, in terms of the code book, I'm a project manager. I do this kind of stuff all the time. I deal with towns all over the state. Usually the regulations written for a code book and a year. So I know you brought up this new code book, but if the town ordinance is based on that one, nothing in that book matters. It's my statement.
Thank you.
All I have to say this time.
Name?
Oh, sorry, Paul LaPresti, 56 Brown Hill. Winter conditions on Brown Hill had been a nightmare for years, and the sightlines out of everyone's driveway has been a nightmare for years. And I foresee that eventually there would have to be a stop sign right at Brown Hill, going down the hill and going up the hill at Bona Vista if this driveway goes in. And that's gonna make it really hard for the plows to get up that hill and that grade. It's also gonna make it hard for everybody above us to get to their driveways, because you get about maybe to 40 or 45, even plowed, it's hard getting up that hill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Close the public hearing.
Good question. What was the typical, road frontage, a single house?
Now,
Yeah,
require 100 feet.
200 feet of road frontage is required for a single home.
Right, in a cluster subdivision, it's 100,
The
just,
ZBA have about 20.
Okay.
And the ZBA approved that as a variance.
And when was the property, this property in back purchased by Tyler Builders back in 78? When was the property purchased?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. So you knew when you purchased the property that you only had 100 feet of road frontage?
Yes.
Okay.
I may state that he switched engineers partway through this.
Yes.
First surveyor and engineer he went to felt confident that the town road was going. They weren't going for 3 lots. He was told he could get 5 or more.
Right.
We came in and took over for the previous surveyor.
Gotcha.
So his intent was.
A good move.
Yeah. Well, you want to talk about spending money.
A couple little things I calculated, just. The contours make it look kind of steep. What the numbers say. You see the survey. This spot, the grade's about 765 feet. It's about 725 here. So it drops 38 feet. Over 550 feet. And it's a fairly average grade. That's only 7%. That's much higher than this. And when it's IC 7%, still 7%, but it's not 20%. And the other thing is that with this book, and there's a lot of discussion on in this one, they have a design speed. They realize some people go slower, some people go faster. But even if you go from a design speed of 35 to 40, the numbers in the small one, which I think is still there, you still have the recommendation for 40 was from 140 feet to 170. So you still have plenty of sight distance, but I'm surprised there's only 40. I suppose that's because you got a narrower road where people can't see very good. If that was 60 foot of cleared trees, the people tend to drive faster when they can see better.
I think that was probably average. I would venture to say there's quite a few people that go faster than even 40 down that road.
We did actually review that data at a meeting a while back.
Apparently, he said the police did a study on that and it was speed trap.
Yeah.
That's good information.
Can I make one comment on that? I know it's close.
sure, yeah, your name again.
Waldo Presley, 56 Brown Hill. You measure the speed by telling people to slow down, you're going over the speed.
So everybody slows down as they approach that sign. So if it really is 40, they were going 45, 46 before they hit that sign area.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, could I offer some insight here? My name's Patricia Pansiaco.
Sure.
A couple of things I wanted to at least make a comment on. There was a comment about a reference to a particular AASHTO manual, and if it's this book, that's what's applied. You don't have a date in your regulation, so presumably it would be the most recent updated version. And Bob is correct. The faster you go, the more sight distance you need. That's kind of common sense. As to the speeds that were measured on Brown Hill Road, it's posted at 30. And while I realize there's there've been data collection out there that the speeds are more than that, that's an enforcement problem. That is not something that we can change. You have to pick a number. The town has to pick a number that above a certain speed, a ticket is issued. And there's a reason for that. You need certainty to enforce the laws. But more importantly, when I was thinking about this, and I did the presentation for the zoning board, we did not give them specific sight distance. We told them the driveway standard was less than the 400 feet required for a road. We asked for the variance because we knew we could not meet the road standard. Now, you asked about when Alan bought the property. And I brought the copies of these plans just so that you can look at them. This is what he saw when he bought the property, just so you can get a picture. You can see quite clearly that the drawing suggests break off the frontage lots, just like Bob mentioned. A 60-foot right-of-way is really unusual. I know it's common in Bow. You've had it for a long time. But most municipalities only require 50. So 60, it was certain, especially with the flares at the end of the road, that when this was approved, the frontage lots, it was contemplated that a road would go in there. So when the deeds for those 4 lots were conveyed, there was references in the deeds to all the lot numbers. And in the plan, it talks about the right-of-way and the roadway. This language appears in the deeds. It says the grantee shall have the right to pave or otherwise improve the right-of-way on the condition that the pavement or other improvements may be destroyed, removed, or otherwise rendered useless by the grantor. So there is these references throughout all the titles, and it's all in the deeds that are owned by the abutting property owners. So they were also on notice that was supposed to be a road. That's as clear as a bell. And if it was taken to court, that's what the judge would look at, is the judge would look at the language in the deed, they would look at the plan and say, what was the intent of the subdivider? A road. But because we could not meet that 400 feet, we took the path of the 3 lots and went to the zoning board. Now, what's important to know, though, is when that plan was approved, Brown Road was laid out as a 2-rod road, 33 feet wide, way back in the day when none of us were here. And when that plan was approved, the planning board dropped the ball. And I'm not looking to point fingers, but why I'm bringing this up is when this came onto my desk, I said to myself, how did we get here? I want you to look at the language in these regulations. it expressly states that if a road didn't meet your 60-foot width, you were supposed to take land on either side. Now, you couldn't take it on the opposite side of Brown Hill Road, but you were supposed to take it on the frontage lots to widen Brown Hill Road to meet your 60-foot requirement. And somehow this didn't happen. Because the intent was that all the roads be 60-foot wide, because that's what the town of Bow likes for their roads. But nobody did it. So the reality is those lots that have the frontage, that are unwilling to give up a tree or improve the sight distance on their own, they should be much further back than they actually are, had the planning board actually enforced its regulations then. This was something that the zoning board gave an awful lot of weight. Because when this project was created, this problem was created. And it really wasn't due to the applicant. It was somebody didn't enforce the regulations. And here we are. Now it surfaces when he goes off and he buys this land, assuming based upon that plan, which most people would look at and say, yes, I can put a road in there. And as Bob said, he thought he would have more lots, but it is what it is. So to meet us in the middle and not leave my client burdened with a problem he didn't create, that was why the zoning board felt this had a substantial hardship. And he was entitled to the reasonable use of his land. Now, with that said, your regulations provide for a waiver of your subdivision regulations as well as of your driveway regulations. The driveway regulations, it says that it's actually the Public Works Director, but you have the right to do it also now, because when you have an administrative appeal such as this, you step into the shoes of the Public Works Director. The request for waiver shall provide written justification and documentation for the waivers. What are the mitigating factors here that justify the waiver? It's the land, and it's the strict enforcement of your regulations as to this property that's causing an unnecessary hardship to my client, who is willing to make any accommodations the board thinks are necessary, a stop sign, a line, however Public Works or yourselves determine would help to alert people, pay attention. People drive too fast on this road. They shouldn't, and the road is narrow to keep people safe. So a purpose of a waiver provision is to avoid that unnecessary hardship when the applicant makes those extra efforts to accommodate the purpose of your regulation, which he's trying to do. And I think Bob's made some really good points here about the posted speed limit. We easily meet the sight distance. 275 is an arbitrary number. It's not a one size fits all that applies to all travel speeds between 0 and 100. It's just a number. So for that reason, and the reason why they have waiver provisions in the driveway regulations as well as subdivision regulations, is to use it when the circumstances presented justify it. And here, it's justified. There's been a lot of talk about how unsafe it is, how fast people travel. Well, as I said, it's enforcement as far as the speed limit. But if the residents in the area are that worried about the speed traveled and about safety, why don't they cut back their trees themselves? I'm sorry. I'm looking at this and saying, okay, we're worried about the public, people other than ourselves. We're not using this as a reason to prevent somebody from reasonably using their land. That's not a difficult thing to ask on a 33-foot wide road. But notwithstanding, based on the posted speed limit, we meet the sight distance, just not the magic number 275, which probably applies to 40 or 50 mile an hour speeds. I don't know what it applies to.
Can I address this?
When I'm done. As far as the snowbank, somebody did ask about that. We do have a common driveway maintenance agreement. We can certainly add that into that instrument and make sure.
Explain what you mean by you just add that. What would you be adding?
Maintaining the snowbanks at a level so that they don't obstruct sight distance. We have no problem with that. Hopefully, everybody else along the frontage there will do the same thing. Keep the snowbanks down. They are a problem when we get snow. We don't get that much anymore, but we certainly can put that covenant into that instrument to make sure that's maintained, because there is a lot of space on either side of the driveway before you hit the neighbor's property line. There's just a strip of empty land on either side because it was supposed to be a 60-foot wide road. So with that said, as I said, I've brought these items just to give you a little bit of history, because Craig and I did a ton of research, and he has the actual layout for Brown Hill Road if anybody would like to ever have it. It was probably in the late 1700s. And that was how we managed to figure out how wide the road was, because at first we didn't know. So he didn't know and nobody else knew, so that he would have notice of what he bought. So with that said, I thank you for your time and we'll go from there. Thank you.
One last thing I'd like to mention too, especially for Steve Perna and myself. When you look at all of these books, regardless how big they are, they all start with guidelines. It's not rules for design, it's guidelines.
Mhm.
You take a road that is laid out in the 1700s here, that road was laid out
Right.
for horses and buggies,
That's right.
and it doesn't meet any standard guidelines. So there's no way a document like this could be thick enough to specify every possible condition that comes up. So when I get my professional engineering license, it's determined that I can use professional judgment
Yeah.
to determine how do I apply these to individual conditions. And nobody in the state knows more about driveways than Steve Perna, who's the letter you gave in. And the same for me. If you try to enforce every provision in every town, you wouldn't be able to do any housing. These people wouldn't have been able to build on their lots because they don't have the 275. But at the time, the DPW director, whoever it was, approved their driveways on their lots,
Mhm.
even though you didn't have the site distance.
Was,
Whatever it was, you did the best
Right.
location.
that's right.
Excuse me, just,
To
These
that,
folks have had 15, 20 minutes.
okay.
The public hearing's actually been closed.
Yeah.
What's that?
The public hearing's been closed.
I can't speak. Thank you.
so to that point, Bob, and I think everybody on the board knows this, that for all the applications that you see, no two are alike. No two pieces of land are alike. And that's the reason for the waiver. Because every parcel of land presents unique questions, no matter how you slice it. I think Bob will tell you that. I know it for a fact, and that's why land use board decisions don't set precedent. It's because they're based on the unique characteristics of each parcel. So I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Sir, do you have one more comment?
I do. And it's this.
Your name again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Phil Simons, 54 Brown Hill Road.
Okay, thank you.
It's nice that they went through all of this research. But the 14 people, the signatories of this petition, it's like we don't exist just because of legalities that were established 1973. I don't think, has there ever been a case where the planning board ruled in favor of the abutters? Ever?
I don't know. I know there are projects that have been turned down by the planning board, but I can't tell you whether it was due to abutters. It was usually the facts of the situation, not just.
Okay, so this woman is actually suggesting that because attorney, excuse me, I didn't mean it that way. Just because it was written, this law, that law, that people should actually cut down their trees, move their property back? Is that,
Well,
that's what I heard her say.
Yeah, well, she can
There's a
say.
common sense
Okay,
element
yeah,
here.
let's, thank you for your comment. I will just say,
Yeah.
she can present information and the planning board will take that information along with other information and our regulations and then evaluate that all.
All right,
And so it's.
I mean, I don't wanna
Say,
hurt what neighbors are trying
yeah,
to do.
no, thank you. Thank you very much.
I think that was well said. It's the role of the planning board to evaluate all of the information that's been presented through testimony from abutters, from experts, from the applicant, and weigh that all out against each other and make a decision based on all of the evidence you've been presented. Which isn't an easy job, and I'm glad I don't have to vote. Or don't get to vote.
Harry, are there's a corner regulation requires lot corners shall be monumented.
Mhm.
Is that a part of the driveway permit?
Sorry. Been so focused on the driveway. My memory of the rest
I'm
of it
just
might be
wondering,
fuzzy.
I'm just wondering if that's included in the waiver for the driveway.
So that, so that's separate, that's a separate waiver request related to the subdivision approval.
They didn't want
It's
to
just
have the
that-
bounds like in the middle of the driveway.
Right.
And then
because
there's a
of-
wetland one, but we're only doing two tonight.
Well, no, I think isn't tonight, aren't we just looking at whether to overturn the,
Driveway and wetland.
that's all we're doing tonight, right?
Driveway.
You can do all of it tonight. I mean, so
It was all advertised.
Yeah,
the.
they're both in there.
But there's three.
I would say there's no sense in acting on the subdivision and application and the wetland application unless you address the driveway waiver first, because that's basically the elephant in the room. If you can't get past that hurdle, the rest of it is pretty much moot.
Okay.
So I
So this is just driveway related.
I would,
For now.
my recommendation is to start there because that's the big hurdle.
Can you address the driveway width?
My recollection is this would be buried 6 sheets down. I think it's 16. I think Craig met with the previous fire chief and that's what he wanted. And then the current fire chief, I think, wanted 18, but when he saw that the previous fire chief said 16, I think it's 16 foot of pavement, 2 foot shoulders on both sides. And then he promised at the end as a part of the condition, once you get way out back, to do a turnaround so the fire truck could actually turn around and not back out.
Yeah.
That'll be shown on the final plan also.
Yeah, I was asking because of the fire chief's comment regarding 20 foot.
Yeah, so once he found out that the previous chief
That's the instruction he gave us.
was happy with 16, then he agreed as well.
Any other questions or thoughts or?
I wonder about, I know that you determined that there's room for all the trash and recycling bins at the end of the driveway. Do you think it would be appropriate to put something in the covenants that says that they don't stay out there all the time? They go out for collection day and come back. So it's a long driveway and I kind of do picture people might just leave them there. And I don't know if we want them out there at the street all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there would be 6. I mean,
Yeah.
recycling and
in the common driveway agreement? Are you talking about?
Yeah, I was wondering if that could be something that could go in there that says that they put it out for collection day and then they bring them back in. I see that in other neighborhoods that have restrictive covenants. Sometimes they put those in just because people don't want to look at trash bins every day.
And they get to be a hazard because.
Right. I'm thinking more of just a hazard, just being
That makes
the
sense.
roadway area, but also neighbors don't like to look at them.
Right, right.
Yeah, I don't like to look at them.
Especially in the winter.
Yes.
Like, I just don't,
Yeah.
I don't see how.
How you plow around them?
Six are gonna be out there with snowbanks and.
With the width that they're supposed to be so that the
Right. and-
equipment can pick them up, 2-3 feet apart.
Yeah. Especially in the driveway.
One question. Typical Southern will choose to have 2 of those pails if they pay their extra 100 and whatever, so it could be up to 9 pails.
Well, I guess that could be something that we could restrict.
I actually didn't even know that you could buy an extra one.
Yes.
but,
you
um,
can,
Yeah.
Does that get reviewed by the public works director? Or is it just you pay
Nope.
the fee? You get
You
your bin?
pay it, yeah. Annual fee, I think.
What's the distance between the driveway to the north and the driveway to, or I guess it would technically be to the east?
Mm.
And then to the west, because I know the west, I recall during the site walk. I don't recall the one that would be to the right of the driveway.
This one.
Yes. Cause it looks like, I mean, from this, it looks like it's,
From where we're gonna put our driveway to theirs, center to center,
Mhm.
looks about 75 feet.
from center.
Center of the road to center of the road, so you take off another 16 feet. 60 feet edge to edge. This one looks even closer on the far side. So both of them too just were fairly close. This one's about 75 feet. Look, they're different, but it's about the same distance. So both of this one to the center and this one to the center, it's about 75 feet.
Yeah, we have established at 150 feet.
What's that?
It was about 150 feet.
Oh, between them now.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I ask about the stop sign? Are there, I don't guess I can't think of other places where there's stop signs on driveways. Is
Yeah,
that,
I know.
is that totally unusual or is that?
There's no reason you can't do it.
Yeah.
And I have no problem doing it. The people who live there, you think they would know where the road is.
There's a white line, you know.
But for the cost of a stop sign, just to make it doubly obvious.
I guess for delivery drivers and those.
Oh, that's true. You do get some people who don't know when it ends. Good point.
Driving down there.
Good point.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just hadn't heard of putting a stop sign on a driveway, but I guess.
Same thing we could do.
And this is a single egress. There's no additional
No,
access.
no way in and out. 3 houses.
Right.
So Steve recommended a 24-inch stop line.
Yeah,
Where does that go?
it usually goes about 3 feet beyond. So you got about 3 feet from the white line to the edge of that, 24 inches. And theoretically, you're supposed to stop behind that. So if you go to the big intersections in Manchester, Lepanham, but even most town roads, I've done a lot of subdivisions in Bedford, Goffstown, all over the place. Typically, most town roads, they don't go in. I think that's a standard language for him that he throws in every place to be a little extra safe. In reality, they never get repainted. 4 years from now, it's gone. Nobody sees it.
So they would, in order for them to be able to get their sight distance, they would have to creep past the stop bar.
The idea is you stop at the white bar, then you can creep forward. So don't fly all the way up to the white line at 35 miles an hour and slam on the brake. Stop 10 feet back and then creep up slow.
What, not fly up to the stop sign?
Do we have our engineer look at the previous, maybe not this one, but probably the previous one? I can't remember what they said.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at it. mean, the lines were correct, like he didn't have any like inaccuracies in the drawing or anything.
But they didn't make any comments on whether it was safe or not. They just said that it,
He basically, we were more focused on whether or not it met the town's regulations. He didn't make a judgment call as to whether it was safe.
Most engineers don't wanna
yeah,
risk
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that's,
getting in trouble, the same with your DPW
Yeah.
director. That he looks at it, that's why you're getting paid the big bucks to be on this board, I mean.
I will agree that that is, know Tim Sweeney struggled with that decision and he really felt that it was important for the board to make the final call on it and not him. I think
Yeah.
in his denial, it wasn't necessarily him saying, there's no way this driveway can go here. It was the planning board needs to consider this. It needs to be decided by a group, not by one person. But he, we invited him to the meeting and he's said, I'll support whatever decision the planning board comes up with. He didn't feel like he needed to come here and lobby one way or the other.
I'd like to say one thing, when we did meet out there with Tim Sweeney. He had asked us to go forward and submit a driveway permit, which we did. And where we were standing on the white line, then went back at least 14 or 15 feet, and he asked me what was coming down for trees, and we kind of measured off to 150 feet, kind of where the center was gonna be. And his exact words were, if it's not up to me, it's not my job to say yes, but if the planning board does approve it, I would approve a driveway permit. He thought there was plenty of sight distance. I was there with him, standing there with him.
But that's because we're technically like overturning his decision, right? Does he have to approve a driveway permit if we do that?
I think you would be approving the driveway permit, not him
Right,
at that
yeah,
point.
yeah.
That's how it is.
So back to him afterward.
So what would this mean, like, if we were to approve this for future applications? Does that mean that we look at, well, I mean, we're essentially making the decision that this is something that's safe, right? So that we would probably want to look at our regulations.
I think regardless, we need to look at the regulations.
Yeah, they chip in.
It really is
Every
case.
situation's different. It's almost good to have a regulation with a bigger number that makes them come to you and then you specifically look at it. That's kind of like the trigger.
Yeah.
So it doesn't grant anybody a right. Every case is different. They can't, there's a term they use where they say that somebody else did it, now I can do it. It's the legal term they use for it. So it's a trigger. Makes you guys look at it.
So we've been out there, we've looked at it. You know, we've had a lot of these plans that we looked at where we looked at the site distance. We know that there's a hill that's coming down. Public Works Director denied the driveway permit application. There's kind of a lot working against it. We had another application that came in before this that they ended up pulling because they were concerned about site distance. I don't know that I feel comfortable overturning what Tim said. Unless we can get those trees taken down.
Without permission from the neighbors, we can't go onto their land and do it.
I don't know.
There's only one tree, really.
I mean, other than the site distance thing, I don't have any issues with the application. But I just feel I feel it's not safe.
I will say that if you deny the appeal, there is always the possibility that with more money or time or new owners, that they could someday get an easement to remove trees. Maybe. I mean, their efforts thus far have not been successful, but that door isn't permanently closed.
That's only been 3 years.
Well, sometimes it takes more money to convince someone. or- property owners change, so it's not a solidly closed door.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Anybody else have any?
I mean, I personally tend to agree with what Adam just said, having been out there, having seen it, knowing the conditions. I mean, it would be, I think it's unfortunate, right? Because it's a large piece of land, but if it was a single driveway with a single house with a much less reduced amount of traffic, that may have changed my opinion, but with three houses, I know it's reduced from what we originally went out there and looked at, because I think it was more. When we.
Five.
It was
I think
five,
it's
right?
5, right?
Yeah, it was 5, yeah.
But even now, I mean, I was thinking about deliveries and the amount of traffic that's coming in and out of that. Concerns me, but also still concerns me, I think, is. When you factor in 6, I'm just thinking through the process, right? This is what I've been going through my mind is you've got now 6 trash bins, potentially more, but let's say 6. You got a snowbank. That's potentially even more impeding the line of sight. Right? Because 2 versus 6 versus like where you're putting them with respect to where you're coming out of that driveway, I get concerned over that. So that's my.
Well, that was spoke about and agreed on with the board that there was no issue with that. There was plenty of frontage to be able to handle the trash cans and the snow and what have you. That the board agreed on that at one time.
I don't disagree with the amount, like the need for that. I'm thinking through like where you're placing those with respect to your cutout. Like even with 150 feet there. Like I just get concerned over that in general. With that many trash bins on that type of slope with snowbanks, and I think through that process, like I think that even further intensifies the circumstances of traffic coming down that hill.
We have mailboxes too.
I didn't even think about that.
When you say slope, that area where the driveways are actually going in is flat.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is you've got the grade coming down the hill.
Oh, yeah.
And you've got a snowbank that's going to go somewhere, and even if you try to mitigate it, and I understand the ability to try to mitigate that. I'm just thinking of 6 bins sitting out there and then still being able to have line of sight past those. Whether you put them on the right-hand side or the left-hand side, it's going to potentially reduce and have an impact. I'm not saying that improves or doesn't improve if you had better visibility or better line of sight, but I think that just adds to the risk of potential accident. Because I'm thinking about also the fact of like trash collection, like that trash truck is gonna have to pick up six bins right there, right? And if you're trying to get out of that. I don't know.
Or someone's coming uphill and behind the truck and wanting to pass.
They do on condo projects,
Yeah.
trash pickup.
They usually have things centralized. They're not on the street.
Dumpsters.
They usually have a designated spot.
Like a dumpster.
Dumpsters.
Yeah. Well, it depends, but usually they're private. It's a whole
It's
private,
inside a
and so they don't
development.
get town
Right, it's
trash
internal.
pickup.
Someone want to make a motion?
If there's,
think anybody wants to.
I know, don't. Envy you, but regardless of the motion, it'll be very important to make very clear findings of fact to support it in either direction. And I think you have evidence in front of you in either direction.
I think I'm honestly kind of leaning the other way. I think this letter from Steve is pretty insightful. And I don't personally know him, but knowing that many people in the room have said that he's an expert in the field. I think his concluding paragraph or sentence there saying that it's, expect this intersection will operate normally from traffic operations capacity and safety standpoint. For me, that kind of says to me that he believes that this is safe and it would be in line with other, intersections of similar properties.
That will be low site distance.
Trash barrel. I don't know what the town,
About 4 feet high.
4 feet?
Yeah. They're tall enough that they're gonna impact the driver seeing up the road.
Depends on the trash barrel
Depends on the car.
and the car.
Trash barrel, the car, and like, is it higher on that if you're setting them out to the right hand side or to the left hand side of the driveway? Right? If it's the left hand side of the driveway, it's gonna be lower, probably. So the right hand side is probably gonna be slightly higher.
So put on the left side, we can designate that. on
Well,
the
we
plan.
could put that in, like, okay, house number 1 and house number 2, whatever. You go on the right, house number 3, you have to put yours on the left.
Yeah, I think.
So if we can.
Yeah, I get that. I just feel like
Petition.
restrictions that people are probably not gonna, they're not gonna.
Think about it.
Yeah.
And it said, do you have it on trash day? And are people more aware when they're driving around when there's been a big snowstorm to look around? I mean, they can block in the parking lots.
This is New England. I bought a house on Peaceful Lane in Concord, right up by the north edge of town. 15 homes on a private road. And on Thursdays, you got 15 mailboxes and all of the bags and cans go up on the left side. I go up, I'm able to take a turn out. The next day, they're all gone. It's New England. 3 to me does not seem like an imposition compared to what I'm used to.
I'll let you speak.
56 Brown Hill Road, Paula Presley. Nobody puts their pails. In the winter, we all put our pails in our driveways. We don't put them on the snow banks. We don't put them in front of the snow banks. Town comes up and plows the white line. The snow is up to the white line. So these pails, if they're not gonna go in the driveway and people aren't gonna move them out of the way before they go, I know I put my pails out after my wife leaves in the middle of my driveway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow it all day.
Yeah.
They can follow it wide, even from. It's open land.
And just, I wanted to double check something because you had mentioned it to us. The town's driveway regulations that you referred to, they do refer specifically to the
Ashto.
AASHTO. And the specific, a policy on geometric design of streets and highways, which is that larger book, not the smaller book.
Right.
Just so we're clear.
Updated.
Our town is following that as a guideline for the driveway regulations, not the smaller book, which is named something different.
Right,
Okay.
right. It's for small volume roads.
Right. So regardless, it sounds like that's the book that the town intended on using, the larger book, not the smaller volume book. Just wanted to verify.
At the end of the day, you still have to balance somebody's reasonable usability against the strict enforcement of a regulation. And when the applicant is willing to make accommodation as
I'm just making sure we have accurate information being shared.
updated, that update will be the reference.
Okay. Any motion from anybody?
What happens if we just don't make the motion?
So technically you have 60 days to address the appeal. In the driveway regulations, it says you have to respond or act within 60 days of receiving their appeal. So you don't have to decide tonight, but you have to, I think if you don't make a decision tonight, you need to come up with a plan. Do we need any more information? How are we going to make a decision at the next meeting? I don't know what to tell you.
Can you ask Tim, like, was his concern based off of the number? Or was it based off of something? Like, I would like to.
He did tell me he would feel more comfortable with your houses. But do you want to get Tim to come to the next meeting? Do you want to talk to him?
We're okay with tabling this for 30 days.
I think it would be beneficial from my point of view to hear directly from him, because I value his input on.
Yeah.
Like road safety, and especially when it comes to plowing in town and the challenges that he's faced with, so.
Is there anything that's worth having our engineer take another look at?
I guess I just would want to be clear on what exactly
I
you
know.
want him to do, because, I mean, he can look at the site distance plan and say, yep, those are where the lines go, but like, what else do you want him to do?
Right.
Yeah.
So many other details that come into play. Besides the site distance.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm assuming they looked at like drainage and stuff too, like when they, because we didn't even like really talk about that at all, but.
Culvert.
Like, is there, yeah,
I know, and yeah, I mean, the board has spent a lot of time talking about site distance, and I don't know, there's also a conditional use permit. I don't know if the board's even really talked about that.
Well, I know that there had been some discussion because Craig had talked about how the drainage goes in both directions, but
Yes.
we kind of said, no, put in a culvert. You know, even though,
I would say, like, from that point of view, we should probably get the engineer's input for the drainage, especially because of where the lower driveway is, so the Duke's property. Like, I feel like we were so focused on site distance and some of the other things that we didn't even talk about that.
Do we also want to have him maybe review Steve's? I mean, I know Steve is the expert, but I just,
I do agree that, I mean, Steve is an expert. No one's gonna even touch that. But when you hire a consultant to work for you, their job is to present your view. That's their
Right.
job. They're being paid. So the town's
Right.
engineer represents the town's interests.
like, I think that it's something that I would like to know, like, is it reasonable for, you know, somebody to pull right up to the edge of the road before, you know, driving out on, you have to come all the way to the edge to see, like, all the way up the hill. Like, I think that's what I'd like to know. Like, is that a reasonable thing?
And I mean, I guess another question, and I don't know if this would be beneficial or not, but I'm like thinking about just area, right, of the driveway. I know it's 16 feet, but is there a way to make it wider, especially at the exit point, right? Because if you do, that's more likely that it's gonna get plowed, it's more likely that you're gonna have more area, space and stuff as far as like
Does it,
putting the bins and stuff.
does it not, Flare?
It's just clear some at the very end.
where's,
But I think what he's suggesting, like Steve suggested, the double yellow line, maybe we do 11-foot lane on both sides for
Yeah.
2 or 3 car lengths.
At the, I don't know how long you would do it for, but
Say 2 car lengths. I'm
yeah,
never gonna have more people than that backed up there.
'cause at least that would help,
do you-
especially going in and out with having the bins on trash day and snow banks and stuff like that, like.
And like you said, that gets the whole thing plowed wider too.
Do you want to do another site walk? Would it help to see it in person again? I don't know if you all remember it or not.
Alan's gonna mark the trees that are gonna be removed with a ribbon so that you can see exactly what's coming down, you're not having to guess.
That's right.
Yeah,
There's a lot of them, isn't it?
there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff in the way, even the wall that's
Right.
gonna be moved. So if you know, look at it at a front at it, that's 150 feet long. If you're standing like this right now and you got all this debris and all this stuff, it's hard for you to kind of see where it's gonna go, but as Tim said, I mean,
I think,
you gotta visualize that type of thing.
I mean, I think it may be beneficial to redo, because when we did the sidewalk before, we were going under the impression that there was gonna be greater sight distance when we went out there. I think it would potentially be worth going back out and understanding like where does 170 feet and where does 140 feet give you
What is that?
sight?
Maybe we can get Tim to come to the sidewalk. I think that could be helpful too,
So
because he can kind of show you what we plow
Right.
here, so we go here,
Right.
I think that would work.
Would the board find it beneficial if if the Duke family was able to come to an agreement on the abutter
And I don't think that that's,
screening issue or?
It's
Yeah.
not related to the site distance, it's more just.
No, I know, but in the driveway
I
in
think
general,
when we get to the,
I didn't know if an agreement in advance would move things along as far as a conditional.
no, I think we would just
Approval.
have to put something in there in that regard.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna do,
Mark the center line of,
You can put as many flags and stakes up as you want.
well, I understand, but like maybe like 30 feet in or
We can make
something,
a real flare, right?
and then start flaring out where the trees are gonna be cut and stuff, so they can get a better view of, okay, I'm standing here. Okay, yeah, if you guys,
I think it would be beneficial to reevaluate, because like I said, when we went out there, we were under the impression that we were gonna do 275. Right, when we initially, that's what we were looking at with. And I think it would be beneficial to see like where does 170, where does 140 get you? And then what does it look like? If that driveway is wider at least the end, 2 car lengths, whatever that looks like.
Say 40 feet.
I think that's correct.
did you want to schedule it immediately prior to the August meeting or at a different time?
When is,
Yeah, I mean, that would probably be better because we could get Tim kind of after his work day.
He's done at 3, so.
Yeah, I know. It's done early. Yeah, I know.
He
He's
gets
not
here
very
or
early,
anyone else.
right?
you got the expert there with that letter, so,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know what else or what more can happen here. 3 years ago and, like the man was saying back there earlier, $1,000 and $2,000. It just adds up, goes on. And so I was hoping we could come to a solution tonight, but doesn't look good.
Let's give them the 30 days and dot the i's and cross the t's, flag everything up so you can see exactly what's gonna be cut.
Yeah.
Where the right of way is.
I think
so
it'll help, regardless of the outcome, I think it'll help all the board members feel comfortable with this decision, knowing that you went to all the lengths you could to get all the information you could. So that's your job. So a site walk, August 15th, do you want to do it at 6? We need more time than that? How much? Is
You said August 15th?
that right? Jim?
yes,
Yes.
yeah, August 15th.
You will be absent a board member.
6 o'clock.
It's a select board meeting, no, it isn't there?
It's Thursday. 13th,
Thursday?
13th.
Okay.
Busy week.
So I'll
Do we want it for 6? Do we feel that 6
Is
is
that a good, I don't know.
okay?
And so that is a public meeting. The butters are welcome to come. Anyone from the public is welcome to come. It'll be advertised. 6 o'clock
6 on the 15th.
on the 15th, so then site walk at 6 and then here at 7.
And when will the next meeting?
Okay,
It's that night. It's that night. Yeah.
I heard a
So
sigh.
We'll do the sidewalk before the,
Yeah, just one
Just
note.
I walk and then it'll be, okay. Go ahead.
I have a zoning board meeting in Hampton that night. Are you okay with Craig doing this? You've heard me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're gonna go out, they have all the info. I mean.
You guys have
the
presented.
data and all the, I mean, I'd love to have you here, Bob, but,
I can't be in Hampton and here at the same night.
well, I cancel the other one.
Everybody in Hampton wants to raise their houses. And
Hmm.
everybody wants us to, we've been asked to do like 30 or 40 house lots. Zoning board, wetland permits, conservation commission. Unbelievable.
But you don't need to be there. That's.
we get a motion for continuance.
I want to go out.
Yeah, I just want to review kind of a few things, just to make sure we have everything we need for the next meeting. So site walk, August 15th at 6, we're gonna invite Tim. We're going to have the third review Steve Frost letter and see if he just has any response to it.
I would like specifically, I guess I'd like to know whether, 6 feet from the edge of the road is reasonable for
Yeah.
them to getting your site distance.
And the drainage, right?
And then, yeah, and to.
I mean, maybe you could also take a look at this figure here and see like, what was one of these other criteria that they meet reasonable, they meet that at 6 feet, but maybe like he looks at it and says, well, 14 and a half feet back at 177 feet is reasonable for this road. Like if one of those combination of things like reasonable.
Or, yeah. It's gonna be, Okay, that makes sense. So I will get a quote for the third party engineer and then send it to you guys, and then we'll get an escrow to cover it.
Yeah, he said yes.
Okay. All right, and then. All right, I think that's what the plan, right?
Sounds good.
Anything else we need? The other thing is we're missing a few key board members tonight, so. Right.
We done?
Somebody want to make a motion to continue it?
I'll make a motion to continue application 501-24 and application 401-24 to the August 15th planning board meeting.
Second.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just note for the record that was a mutual agreement between the applicant and the board to extend the review deadline.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You.
See you next year.
Just put your documents in your notebook so we don't
Yeah.
get more copies.
That would be fantastic. We printed these like 20 times. I bet.
Do it one-handed, you isolate almost.
Okay, no new business. Correspondence and other business.
So in your packet, there's a letter from Jeff Adler to Blaine King. This is related to the Sawmill Roads division. They have completed their roadway work at this point. They have a family who is eager to move in this weekend.
Wow.
They have like a 3-month-old baby and they're ready to get into their home.
We'll bring them muffins.
Which is understandable. So the situation is they are required to, they start with a performance bond, which covers the full cost of the improvements. After they reach the point where they just have the final coat of pavement left, the,
Do you want to? Okay.
At the point when there's just the final coat of pavement left, the performance bond basically transfers into what we call a maintenance bond, which lasts for 2 years and covers the final coat of pavement and any latent defects. They are basically there are some improvements to the access way, the gravel access ways to the stormwater basins that is actually made some progress on that today. It'll be done next week. So technically they still have that work outstanding. But you have the letter from the town's engineer here that says that they feel that the bond amount is more than sufficient to cover that work if necessary, and that that work doesn't affect the functionality for a family to be living there. It's safe. The road is open. So it is their recommendation that you lease the performance bond and accept a maintenance bond in the amount of $424,000, 509. I didn't say that right, but
Yes.
numbers, it's late. There also reviewed the as-built plans. There were 2 outlet control structures that needed data, and the engineers are coordinating on getting that information.
So I will make a motion that we accept the reduction in the bond amount. So that it is a maintenance, what would you call it?
The maintenance bond.
A maintenance bond in the amount of $424,509.50.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just to ask now, I want to wait till Don's back, but it was unclear to me whether this needed to come to the planning board or not. Our regulations just say that it can't be released until the town engineer certifies that it's good to go. I found memos from past where planning board, it was like the planning board voted to release the bond. It doesn't say that in the regulations, but because we had those past letters, because your meeting lined up perfectly with, I got this letter today, they wanted to do a CO tomorrow, this meeting couldn't have been better timed, so I was like, I'm gonna bring it to you, and because there's like a little bit outside of the norm, because there's a tiny bit of outstanding work, worked out perfectly tonight, but do you want me to continue to bring you any bond reduction requests? And if so, we should probably put that in the regulations.
So do you always get a letter from the engineer?
Yes, the regulation says it can't be released or reduced without the certification of the engineer. So I don't know if there's any situations where the planning board would go against the recommendation of the town engineer.
Yeah.
I look at it, if the town engineer says it's good.
If there was something that, if there was an issue that came up where you thought that we would need to look at it. I don't know why, like, Pinnacle comes to mind.
Yeah.
Oh, I found all those memos when I was looking for precedents.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, unless there's like an issue or something, I would say if the engineer says it's good.
It's on Google Maps. Mill Road now. Yeah,
I drove last weekend.
they said they're getting a lot of traffic action.
Yeah.
I've driven-
Rubbernecks.
They are.
Everyone has, right?
Every time my daughter's like, let's go down that one, that's a new road.
Oh,
They were
yeah.
actually built. So we-
It's now a new walking route for a lot of people.
Yes, I've seen that too. So yeah, so this would be the first occupancy. Exciting. For them.
So I guess minutes are next. Anybody have any comments?
So weird seeing Tim Berninger, Oil Tanner and Associates.
Right.
Yeah, I
It's
just,
so long.
I know.
Tim Berninger, TF Berninger.
Mhm.
I know I have a few comments and I didn't kind of rewrite it, but on the Bruce Family Trust kind of paragraph, it talked about the recalculating some wetland buffers, and I think it was really primarily the buffer on the pond.
Sorry, what line are you on?
151. I guess we could say,
Whoops.
buffer on the pond. I don't know if you want to say, change it from 30 to 75 feet.
Yeah, correcting the wetland buffer from the pond. From 30 to 75 feet, that's what
Yeah.
it was, right? Oh, the recalculating referred to recalculating the buffer impact.
Can you read the sentence exactly how you want?
Right, I know, that's what I think we're figuring now.
Yeah, it's basically, so if you go down the
Yeah.
line 173,
Wait a minute.
in the conditions, it was correcting the buffers to show 75 surface water.
The word recalculate refers to recalculating the buffer impacts, so like,
Yeah.
that's where that word came from.
All right, so should we say,
Several items including correcting
uh,
the buffer
Pond
to
buffer.
reflect 75 feet from the surface water buffer of the pond.
yeah, and then do we say?
And then comma.
Calculate wetland buffer impact for shed and fire pit.
Yes. That would do it.
Calculate.
Recalculate, one of the
Basically, condition number 2.
Okay, do you want to send this to me, maybe?
Well, I'll help you in the morning.
Okay, because I'm not quite getting it.
Right.
It's past bedtime. Past bedtime. Yeah, we'll do it in the morning.
Any other edits? I want to make a motion
I move approval of the minutes
as a minute.
as amended.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Oh, yeah. Do you have anything that you want to bring to our attention? Just observing. Nothing better to do.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Ben Davis. I applied for the planning board a while back. I couldn't make the June meeting and was encouraged that I watch them online, but it's nicer to watch them at 1.5 times speed.
I bet.
Yeah, so I'm just here to attend.
Oh, great.
When did you submit your application?
I think it was in May.
In May?
It was in May, and then,
The June, I was away for the June meeting and here we are, July.
Oh, is it one of the prerequisites?
yeah,
that you?
sit through a meeting.
Encouraged.
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah. Do you still wanna?
I learned a lot from the engineer guy and the sightlines and regulate. I thought it was very interesting. So yes, I'm still interested.
Okay, great.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing you again soon, hopefully. Are you gonna reach out to Tanya and get on an agenda to be appointed? or-
Yeah, I've been emailing with Tanya and
Ginger.
Ginger.
All right, so we'll get that straightened out and get you on an agenda. Perfect. Thank you. We appreciate it. We
Thank
really,
you.
obviously, this is all run by volunteers. This is how it goes.
I want to move, adjourn.
Non-public? No.
No, we just keep it on the agenda in case we need it.
Okay. Good.
Done.
Motion.
Andy did,
Oh, she did?
yeah.
I'll second it.
It's just.
It was a strong